His answer was so powerful and determined that the Absolute Beauty and the strong man were a little shocked. The Absolute Beauty looked Jian Wushuang deep in his eyes and roared in a low voice, "Demon 13! Clang! The ground in front of Jian Wushuang suddenly tore open. Then a human-shaped demonic puppet wearing a greenish-black battle suit appeared. The demonic puppet held one sword in each hand, but he didn't give out any breath. "You said you can match your father, but it's easier said than done. This demonic puppet is the weakest one among all the demonic puppets in the ancestors' land. So as long as you defeat it, I will approve of your strength and allow you to take the ancestors' land's trial. But if you can't beat this demonic puppet, you'd better get your ass out of here," said the Absolute Beauty in a cold tone. "Defeat it." Jian Wushuang looked at the demonic puppet in greenish-black armor. Since it didn't reveal any aura, he didn't have a clue about the puppet's strength unless they were to start fighting. "I will have a try." A touch of battle intent emerged in Jian Wushuang's eyes as the triple-kill sword appeared in his hand. The demonic puppet didn't possess any wisdom, so as the Absolute Beauty ordered, it stamped on the ground and then dashed towards Jian Wushuang, piercing through the air along the way. Swoosh! The demonic puppet appeared in front of Jian Wushuang, and then waved the two long swords in its hands, chopping at Jian Wushuang in succession. With no sword essence and no majestic swordsmanship, it only attacked with pure physical power. However, this power was unexpectedly threatening. Jian Wushuang's triple-kill sword cut out immediately, but when it clashed with the two long swords, clang! Jian Wushuang couldn't help but be forced back rapidly. Such strong power, it might be stronger than those experts at the peak of the Yin Void Realm, or even not far from those in the initial of Yang Void Realm. Jian Wushuang was secretly astonished. The Absolute Beauty sneered at him. "Boy, though Demon 13 is the weakest among all the demonic puppets in the ancestors' land, it is at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. Moreover, as a demonic puppet, despite it knowing nothing about sword technique and sword essence, its power, speed, and defending ability are far beyond an average human warrior at the peak of the Yin Void Realm, and possibly not much weaker than people in the Yang Void Realm. When your father came here, he also fought with Demon 13. At that time, your father was already in the extreme of exceptional Gold Core Realm, and he combined 3 special essences: Dark, Light, and Thunderbolt. Though he had mighty battle strength and brutal swordsmanship, it took him no less than 20 breaths' time to beat the demonic puppet down. And you'll be lucky to last for 20 breaths, not to mention defeating it." When the Absolute Beauty finished her words, the demonic puppet rushed out again. Swoosh! A horrible wind swept out. The demonic puppet carried out its simple chopping attacks. However, the power given out by the 2 long swords was terrifying. 20 breaths. Jian Wushuang laughed. Then he thrust out his triple-kill sword, demonstrating the 3rd move of the selfless sword technique, Sky Isolating Form. At the same time, for sword essences were combined, and the power of his swordsmanship burst out. A mighty and golden flowing light clashed directly with the 2 swords. The shock wave spread out, forcing the demonic puppet backward. Jian Wushuang's figure moved swiftly like a ghost, and then appeared next to the demonic puppet. Shwa! A sparkling sword shadow cut towards the demonic puppet's waist. The demonic puppet's strength was brutal indeed, but it knew no fighting skills and its body was clumsy. Couldn't escape the sword shadow from Jian Wushuang. But it seemed that the demonic puppet didn't plan to dodge. It's useless. The demonic puppet was made by special materials, and the greenish-black armor on its body is extremely firm and tenacious. Even a normal warrior at the peak of the Yin Void Realm cannot hurt it easily. And you? Before finishing her words, the Absolute Beauty was stunned. The sword shadow given out by Jian Wushuang was heading toward the demonic puppet as if it could rip everything apart. When it chopped at its waist and scratched out, shwa! The entire stomach of the demonic puppet was cut open. Since it was a puppet, neither blood nor organs rushed out. How could this be possible? The Absolute Beauty and the strong man were both shocked. Origin. The Absolute Beauty looked over at Jian Wushuang immediately. She sensed the mysterious power in Jian Wushuang's sword. It was undoubtedly the origin. No wonder you are so confident to compare yourself with your father. You should have mastered the origin. The absolute beauty stared at Jian Wushuang. The origin you mastered includes the 4 essences of earth, gale, fire, and water, so it should be the combined origin of the world. Origin of the world? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Though he knew he had mastered an origin, he didn't know which type it was. Now he knew that what he comprehended was the origin of the world. Fine. Since you can comprehend origin at the primordial gold core level, your battle strength is certainly more powerful than your father's. I admit that you're qualified to take the trial of the ancestors' land, said the absolute beauty. Jian Wushuang, however, just slightly smiled. Boy, although you can take the trial, I shall warn you that the trial of ancestors' land is not easy at all. It's great if you pass it, but if you don't, you will die in the trial, so you need to be prepared, the absolute beauty said. If I can't pass, I will die? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. My father also knew the danger of the trial, but he took it without hesitation because he was confident of his strength. And now I am even stronger than my father was. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands, and a hint of determination rose in his eyes. Fortune comes with danger, and Jian Wushuang knew this very well. Since he came to the ancestors' land to improve his strength, he had been ready to take risks. Let's do it. Jian Wushuang looked at the absolute beauty and said in a low voice, Okay, come with me. The absolute beauty looked back and led the way with the strong man. Before long, guided by the absolute beauty, Jian Wushuang arrived at a pitch-black palace, whose gate was closed. The first test of the ancestors' land is in the palace, the absolute beauty said. Jingle! The gate of the pitch-black palace suddenly opened. Jian Wushuang immediately looked inside, but there was only darkness. Go in, the absolute beauty said. Jian Wushuang breathed deeply and then entered the palace without hesitation. The absolute beauty and the strong man followed him. The palace was still in total darkness and nothing was visible. What is the test of the ancestors' land? Jian Wushuang frowned and looked around. Little guy, are you ready? The test is coming. The voice of the absolute beauty came from behind him. Although Jian Wushuang heard her voice, he couldn't see her. However, as the absolute beauty finished it, suddenly, kill, kill, kill. 3 roars reverberated in the palace. Jian Wushuang felt an unprecedented and horrible murderous gaze coming toward him. Rumble. Jian Wushuang's brain roared instantly. Damn it! All of the people belonging to Blood Feather Tower have to die. Kill them. All of you have to die. With eyes instantly turning ruddy, Jian Wushuang roared and his face awfully contorted. Ah! A deafening sound echoed and Jian Wushuang's mind was imbued with killing intent. The killing intent was extraordinarily huge. This time, it was engulfing Jian Wushuang's heart and seemed to have covered his whole heart and body. At the moment when the terrific killing intent burst out, Jian Wushuang was still forced to retain a vestige of awareness. He continued to roar with his head in his hands. His veins were accentuated, but his eyes still showed a vestige of awareness. It was this vestige of awareness that allowed him to keep a cool head. Otherwise, he would become a demon. However, at this point, kill, kill, kill. Another 3 roars echoed in the palace. The 3 roars contained more terrific killing intent than before. Jian Wushuang's eyes grew scarlet, but at this point, he bit the tip of his tongue and dug his fingernails into his palms. The sharp pain generated by the flowing blood made his fading awareness appear again. Zoom! Everything disappeared suddenly. The killing intent which filled his brain and engulfed everything disappeared. Jian Wushuang's sight slowly became clearer, but his body was bent with his head down as he breathed deeply. Although it was very transient, Jian Wushuang felt that he had died twice. The killing intent was incredibly terrifying and occupied his body and heart. Fortunately, after so many years of experience, his heart was stronger than warriors at the same level. Thus he could keep himself awake. Otherwise, if his whole body and heart were occupied by the killing intent, he would become a bona fide madman who only knew how to kill. At this point, it would hard to awaken again. Little guy, how about that? A figure emerged at Jian Wushuang's side. It was the absolute beauty. Was this the first test of the ancestors' land? Jian Wushuang slightly raised his head and looked at the absolute beauty. No, it wasn't. I would not require you to come until you reached the Void realm if that was the first test. The absolute beauty sneered. What you suffered was the first step of the first test. It was only the beginning. If you couldn't pass it, you would be unable to take the real test. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang frowned instantly, but the determination in his eyes was no less than before. Haha, your temper is the same as your father's. Both of you are indomitable. Seeing Jian Wushuang's eyes, the absolute beauty smiled slightly. Then she appeared in a corner of the palace and waved, causing a door to appear in the dark palace. This is the real first test of the ancestors' land. Get in, the absolute beauty said. Jian Wushuang stood up. After his state had slowly recovered, he entered the door. As soon as Jian Wushuang entered, the door closed instantly. This time, the absolute beauty and the strong man did not follow Jian Wushuang. However, in fact, he was still in the palace and in front of the absolute beauty and the strong man, but he was oblivious to this. This guy has entered the illusory realm of slaughter. Seeing Jian Wushuang looking around ignorantly in front of her, the absolute beauty said seriously. Once entering the illusory realm of slaughter, what he sees is an illusion. I don't know whether he can distinguish this, the strong man said. The absolute beauty said coldly. He may lose himself any time, for what he feels is very real, and he has to stay in the illusion for a long time even if he knows that it is an illusion. What is most important is that the aim of the test of the illusory realm of slaughter isn't whether he can distinguish between reality and illusion or not. He has great talent, but it'll be hard to pass it. According to the rule of the ancestors' land, if he doesn't pass it, what we should do is kill him. The ancestors' land had its rule. In the 3 tests of the ancestors' land, the first one was the most rigorous. You must die if you took it but failed. However, the second and the third test were not rigorous like the first one. If someone did not pass them, he would still be alive, although he would not have another chance to take them. It's highly possible for him to pass it because he has comprehended the origin, the strong man said. Maybe, the absolute beauty said, and then they silently waited for Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang, upon entering the door, he was in the illusion. What he found was that he was in a paradise. He was in a quiet and peaceful village. There was no discord nor slaughter, but peace. The sun was setting, and the smoke curled slowly from the chimney in the village. Jian Wushuang appeared in the gate of the village. He was ignorant and looked around. Where am I? Jian Wushuang frowned. He didn't know where he was, but he knew his identity and that he took the first test in the ancestors' land. The quiet and peaceful village should be the testing scene. This is an illusion? Jian Wushuang thought secretly. Although he knew that it was an illusion, what he experienced was so real. With the breeze blowing, Jian Wushuang felt refreshed. After looking at this quiet and peaceful village, Jian Wushuang slowly approached it. In the village, there were a lot of people. When Jian Wushuang was walking on the street, the passers-by were all looking at him. Oh, a foreigner? Hi. A hunchbacked old man with gray hair smiled and said, carrying a sword, he seems to be a strong man. Is he stronger than those strong men in our village? A stout man with black skin, wearing hides, said, the foreigner is handsome. A loving girl looked at Jian Wushuang and then left with alacrity. Jian Wushuang was walking in the village and saw some people greeting him, which made him look queer. Hey boy! A crude voice sounded out. Jian Wushuang turned his head to look at the house. In front of the house, a stout man sitting on the ground casually and holding a pot of wine, said with a smile, foreigners hardly come here. Come over. Just have a drink. Saying that, the stout man threw his pot to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang held the pot, pulling the plug. He smelled and drank it. The wine contained much alcohol. After drinking it, Jian Wushuang felt a pungent feeling running through his whole body. It's in an illusion, but the feeling is real. The taste of the wine is also the same as in reality. Looking at the pot, Jian Wushuang formed an odd expression. He threw the pot to the stout man and kept on going without stopping. "Be careful!" A man, carrying a huge piece of wood, passed by Jian Wushuang. The huge wood was very long and thick, so it was easy for it to strike people. As a result, the man warned Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stepped aside from the man. But at this point, a child who seemed to be 5 or 6 years old, holding a drum-shaped rattle, appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and hopped toward him. When the child approached Jian Wushuang, he stopped and raised his head, staring at Jian Wushuang with his big eyes. "Brother, are you a foreigner?" the naive child asked. Jian Wushuang looked at this child before he smiled slightly and then nodded. "You are a real foreigner. It's my first time seeing a foreigner." The voice of the child was filled with surprise. "Who's he?" A middle-aged woman came over. "Mom." The child ran toward the woman instantly. The woman held the child in her hands and then walked to Jian Wushuang. "Are you a foreigner?" the affable middle-aged woman asked. "Yes," Jian Wushuang said and nodded slightly. "For a long time, no foreigner has come to our village. Come on. I can cook noodles for you in my shop." The middle-aged woman was enthusiastic. Jian Wushuang lifted his brows. Nodding his head, he followed the woman without hesitation and then arrived at the woman's shop. Jian Wushuang sat down in front of a square table. The woman was cooking noodles and the child was playing alone in the shop. "Here," Jian Wushuang looked around and a smile grew on his face. This village was a real paradise. The village was quiet and peaceful, and the people here were hospitable as well as amiable. It would be nice if the village is real, Jian Wushuang thought secretly, but he knew that an illusion was an illusion and reality was reality. The law of the jungle was real and a powerhouse was respected in the reality. A place like this village would probably not exist. What is the test of the ancestors' land? Jian Wushuang was confounded. By now, what he saw was really nice. He suspected that the aim of the test was letting him sink into this fantasy. But this might be too easy. Although everything here was nice, it was in the illusion. Even if he had stayed here for decades, he could still distinguish reality from this illusion. "Brother." When Jian Wushuang was thinking, the child came over. Jian Wushuang looked at the child casually and the child rose his head. But just then, the naive child's eyes flashed a coldness and then a dagger appeared in his hands. The dagger was proceeding toward Jian Wushuang's heart at this moment. "What?" Although Jian Wushuang was shocked, his reaction was very fast as he quickly held the child's arms. Compared to Jian Wushuang, the child was very weak, so the dagger was suspended in the air and could not continue forward. The child's face was contorted and imbued with madness. Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. At this moment, a supersonic voice sounded out. Jian Wushuang glanced at the child's side and found that the middle-aged woman who was previously enthusiastic was dashing toward him. The middle-aged woman held a kitchen knife and chopped toward Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang shifted his body and he appeared outside as the kitchen knife chopped on the square table. "My spiritual power." The complexion of Jian Wushuang was serious. When he dodged the attack from the middle-aged woman, he perceived that at that moment he should not use any spiritual power. Although he was in the exceptional gold core realm and he could void walk, at this moment he could not use any spiritual power just like a normal person. Whoosh! With the majestic wind blowing, Jian Wushuang lowered his head subliminally and then a huge piece of wood ran over his head. Jian Wushuang turned and found that the stout man previously holding the huge piece of wood was staring at him crazily. "These people are all mad?" Jian Wushuang frowned. This frenzied scene stood in sharp contrast to the previously quiet and peaceful image. Whoosh! A cold light emerged and Jian Wushuang stepped away to dodge it. He saw that the stout man who drank with him before was filled with huge killing intent. Rumble! The whole village was immersed in the tumult. A cascade of people walked out and held arms. Someone held a kitchen knife. Someone held a hoe. Someone held a sickle. There was a wide assortment of arms the people were holding. Jian Wushuang was surrounded by hundreds of people. Everyone was crazy. They were all staring at Jian Wushuang, their eyes filled with killing intent. What on earth happened? Jian Wushuang looked at the crowd while frowning. Among the crowd, there were many people who had treated him enthusiastically, such as the humpbacked elder with gray hair, the stout man who wore an animal skin, and the young girl who praised his handsomeness. Now they were gazing at him with killing intent. Die! Die! Go to hell! Kill him! Low growls sounded from the crowd, and then people crazily dashed toward Jian Wushuang. Kitchen knives, hoes, sickles, and even butcher's knives were thrown at Jian Wushuang. Shit! After noticing it, Jian Wushuang's face changed. Ordinarily, he would walk on the air to leave when encountering such a situation. But now, he was unable to use any spiritual power, so he could not void walk. Seeing the crowd dashing toward him, Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold, and he abruptly drew his triple-kill sword. After being drawn out of the sheath, the long sword transformed into a flowing light, instantly sweeping through 6 people who were rushing toward Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang now was unable to use his spiritual power, his swordsmanship and comprehension of the sword essence could be used. Now Jian Wushuang faced the situation his father had encountered. When trapped in the 9 Emperors sect, his father didn't possess any spiritual power because of his broken dantian, but he killed an expert of the initial void realm with merely 1 stroke. Without using spiritual power, Jian Wushuang could easily deal with those ordinary men by means of his swordsmanship and comprehension of the sword essence. Chi, 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 chi. 6 sounds sounded out simultaneously. At that moment, the 6 men's wrists were pushed away by Jian Wushuang. Despite all this, those 6 men still crazily pounced on him and violently attacked him. Jian Wushuang's face turned dark. He realized that he should absolutely show them no mercy, otherwise he would be killed eventually. After thinking carefully, Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated. Go to hell! The triple-kill sword was wielded, and instantly, the sharp sword light cut through the throats of several people around him. Slaughter. Crazy slaughter. Only streaks of unbridled sword shadow could be seen. These ordinary people didn't have any ability to resist and were thus killed one by one. While Jian Wushuang was slaughtering crazily wielding his long sword in the palace, the absolute beauty and the strong man retreated to the corner and looked straight ahead at Jian Wushuang. Streaks of sword light actually chopped through the void. But for Jian Wushuang, every sword wielded by him was stained with blood. He has totally sunk into the illusory realm of slaughter, the strong man said in a low voice. The absolute beauty said seriously, the illusory realm of slaughter is an endless slaughter. Whoever he meets in the illusory will be desperate to kill him, and he has to force himself to keep slaughtering. The more people he slaughters, the stronger his killing intent will be. In the end, he will be numb in slaughter. Once he is numb, his mentality will change. It depends on whether he is able to follow his heart to carry on. In this world, killing was not a big deal. It was tough to change one's mentality by killing 1, 10, or even 100 people. However, when one killed thousands of people or even more who just were ordinary people, regardless of who they were, their mentality would change or become distorted. As for the illusory realm, there were 2 kinds of trials. One was changing mentality. If under the circumstances of being forced to slaughter, Jian Wushuang changed his mentality to one of a great devil who was addicted to slaughtering and was indifferent to others' lives, he would have failed in the trial. Unless he retained his original mentality and carried on bravely from the beginning to the end, he would then be able to arrive at the end of the illusory realm of slaughter. There was a long way to go. It all depended on Jian Wushuang himself. Within the illusory realm, the tranquility and quietness of the original village had disappeared. The whole village was covered in blood like it was an entire sea of blood. Numbers of corpses lay in a state of disarray in the street, including the elderly, children, and women. All of them were ordinary people. To Jian Wushuang, an expert of the sword principle, they were physically weak. But now they were all killed by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was standing up in blood, while trembling slightly. Even though he knew that everything merely was illusory, he felt unnatural. After taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang managed to calm himself down as he looked around. Previously, the village made me feel peace and warmth. Shortly afterward, all of the villagers began attacking me ferociously. Jian Wushuang shook his head slightly. What on earth is the first trial of the ancestors' land? Jian Wushuang couldn't understand it. He followed his original mentality, the same as in the illusory realm. In the beginning, he showed mercy to those villagers who were proactive in trying to kill him. He didn't kill them until he found that it was useless to show them mercy. What he did shook him, but he soon calmed himself. He didn't feel remorse. After he left the village, Jian Wushuang kept moving forward. He didn't know where to go, but he was guided by a will of the unseen world, which led him to keep moving forward. As time went by, Jian Wushuang had no idea how far he had already traveled in the illusory realm. Similarly, he couldn't remember how many people he had killed. In short, whoever saw Jian Wushuang pass by would dash toward him crazily to kill him, while he reacted against them with slaughter. He had to protect himself. Going so far and killing thousands of people, Jian Wushuang had already become numb. Momentarily, he arrived at the edge of a majestic mountaintop with a bottomless cliff at the front. Beside the edge of the cliff, a stone tablet was erected, which had 3 scratched words carved into it. Cliff of Repentance. Jian Wushuang stopped to look at the 3 words on the stone tablet. In repentance, there is a salvation. A resonating voice sounded suddenly. When Jian Wushuang turned his head, he saw a green-clothed elder who wore a straw hat, standing barefoot beside a huge stone. The green-clothed elder was covered with dirt, but his eyes were sparkling, staring at Jian Wushuang. Seeing him, Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. Warrior! Jian Wushuang felt spiritual power from the green-clothed elder. Although his spiritual power was not so strong and only reached primordial gold core realm, he was the first warrior who Jian Wushuang had met after arriving in the illusory realm. I'm Wu Xian, the guardian of this world. Staring at Jian Wushuang, the green-clothed elder said coldly, Sir, it's enough that you, an outsider, has intruded into this world. Why must you slaughter here? How long have you been in this world, and how many people have you killed? Why did you kill them? Who you are to kill them? Did you know that they were all ordinary beings, among which were old and young? But they all died in your hands. Do you think that it is pleasant to kill them, or are you high on killing? Tell me why. Tell me. As the green-clothed elder finished speaking, his voice almost became a roar. Why? A slight surprise flashed through Jian Wushuang's eyes as he took a breath and turned to the green-clothed elder. I will not attack unless I'm attacked. If I'm attacked, I will certainly counterattack. They wanted to kill me, so I killed them. If you're going to kill me, I will kill you too. This is the way of killing that I've always been following. Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, and when he was talking, the firmness in his eyes did not waver at all. What kind of way of killing? In my eyes, you are keen on slaughter. No matter what you say, today I must kill you with my sword, the green-clothed elder said loudly, and then stepped out suddenly. Just with 3 consecutive steps, he arrived before Jian Wushuang. Demon, go to hell! Staring at Jian Wushuang, the green-clothed elder hacked out with the heavy sword in his hand. The sword edge cut through the void, and directly hacked toward Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold, and he suddenly raised his head. Boom! A terrifying killing intent instantly swept out. Suddenly the world changed color, and the entire space completely froze at this moment. The killing intent could frighten the heavens and move the earth. This killing intent was condensed through Jian Wushuang's slaughter of many people ever since he had stepped into this illusion. He had killed so many people in this illusion that his killing intent would increase by 1 point every time he killed one more. After such a long period of time, his killing intent had reached an alarming point. Even if it was only an outbreak of killing intent, it could easily make warriors of the primordial gold core realm lose their minds. However, in the illusion, although the green-clothed elder in front of Jian Wushuang was at the primordial gold core realm, he was born from the illusion. So no matter how strong Jian Wushuang's killing intent was, it could not, in fact, affect this green-clothed elder at all. But suddenly the triple-kill sword on Jian Wushuang's back was unsheathed and turned into a cold flowing light that directly hacked out. Bang! With a loud blast, The ground below Jian Wushuang's feet cracked suddenly and his body sank. As soon as he fell into the illusion, he could not use his spiritual power or even the world origin that he had comprehended. It would be hard since he could only rely on the combination of the 4 sword essences and swordsmanship to fight against the green-clothed elder, who was in the exceptional gold core realm. However, he still had the strength to attempt it. Go to hell! The green-clothed elder's eyes were crimson and full of murderous intent. The heavy sword struck again and again, and Jian Wushuang tried his best to fight against it. Just like a wooden boat falling into a storm, he could be destroyed at any time. When the fierce fight started, Jian Wushuang found that the sword essences he had comprehended were gradually disappearing. I can't use spiritual power nor world origin, and now can't I even use the sword essences? Jian Wushuang frowned tightly. He could barely contend with the green-clothed elder if he only relied on his comprehension of the sword essences. But now that his comprehension of the sword essences was also disappearing, and the rate at which this was happening was so fast that in moments, Jian Wushuang found he could not sense any sword essence. Boom! A towering sword light suddenly struck down. The power of the sword light was not very strong. If it was in the outside world, it was just close to the strength of warriors on the earthly dragon list. Normally, such a sword light was nothing to Jian Wushuang. He could smash numerous such sword lights just by raising his hands. But now, he could not use spiritual power, world origin, or sword essences. This sword light became a deadly sword. Go to hell, demon! The green-clothed elder was still crazily roaring. Jian Wushuang's eyes also turned crazy, and his killing intent seemed to form the essence. Endless killing intent converged at one point and then burst out suddenly. Whoever wants to kill me, I will kill him. Go to hell! Jian Wushuang also roared crazily, and the triple-kill sword in his hand directly stabbed out. Still lacking any spiritual power or sword essence, the moment this sword stabbed out, it was covered by perpetual killing intent. Meanwhile, an extremely violent power mixed with the long sword and turned into a terrible sword light that was capable of piercing through mountains. Bang! The heavy sword in the green-clothed elder's hand directly flew out, but the power of the sword light did not abate at all. Rushing towards the green-clothed elder with irresistible force, the sword light directly penetrated through the elder's body and left a huge hole in his chest. The green-clothed elder had a feeling of incredible disbelief before he died, and then his body powerlessly fell to the ground. The moment the green-clothed elder fell down, the endless heavens and earth began to suddenly collapse. Mountains, rivers, trees, the sky, and the earth all completely disappeared at this moment. Everything was peaceful again. In the pitch-black palace of the ancestors' land, Jian Wushuang looked at the darkness around him. He knew that he had broken through the illusion. The absolute beauty, who had been waiting quietly in the palace to watch everything, arrived before Jian Wushuang with the strong man. She took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and said, "Boy, congratulations! You have mastered slaughter origin and have stepped onto the path of slaughter." Slaughter origin? Jian Wushuang's expression changed, and the towering killing intent in his body suddenly swept out. Although it was not as violent as in the illusion, it was still unusual. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang also sensed the new power that he had mastered. This power was very similar to world origin that he had mastered. Slaughter origin. Similar to the sword essence, the origin had different types. The reason why he had been able to kill the green-clothed elder with one sword move was that he understood slaughter origin at the last moment. In the illusory realm of slaughter, world origin he comprehended could not be used, but slaughter origin he had just understood could be used to its fullest extent. Slaughter origin blended into swordsmanship, which caused the power of his swordsmanship to rise suddenly and sharply, thus allowing him to kill the green-clothed elder of the exceptional gold core realm with one sword move. Is the test of the ancestors' land to comprehend slaughter origin? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. The absolute beauty nodded. The first test of the ancestors' land can be divided into 3 steps, but all these steps are focused around slaughter origin. Slaughter origin is an extremely violent origin that is difficult to control. A warrior who is lucky to understand slaughter origin, if his mind isn't firm enough, is very likely to be directly controlled by slaughter origin and become a mad demon that only knows how to kill. As a result, the first step to this test is your ability to master it. So you went through 6 roars of killing at the beginning. Jian Wushuang was a little bit surprised. Different types of origin had different properties. World origin was naturally comprehended by Jian Wushuang after he combined the 4 sword essences. World origin contained everything in the heaven and earth. It was a source of energy that was perfect in all aspects and without flaws. However, slaughter origin was an origin that was extremely cruel. Slaughter origin was specialized in attacking and killing. In terms of killing power, it was much stronger than world origin. But in all other aspects, it was no better than world origin. It was extremely cruel and focused on the offense, so it was very hard for people to manage it. The Absolute Beauty said, "The second stage of the test was to test your mentality. Although slaughter origin is mainly on killing, the decision to kill must be followed by the conscience. Even if you need to commit a murder, you need to be reasonable and have a clear conscience. You killed many people in illusory realm of slaughter, but you still held your original mind and was not lost in the killing, so you passed the second stage. Then you entered the final stage of the dreamland, Cliff of Repentance. The third step was the most important one as it was a test of comprehension of the origin. Slaughter origin was originally comprehended gradually through killing. The purpose of the second stage was not just testing, but it also allowed you to slowly store up the killing intent at the same time. In the third stage, the killing intent would suddenly be activated when you confronted a guardian in the dreamland. The moment when the killing intent broke out was the best time for you to fully comprehend slaughter origin and hopefully succeed as well. The Absolute Beauty was smiling. However, hearing this, Jian Wushuang had an odd expression on his face. He did not expect that the first test on the ancestors' land included so many complicated steps, and all with astonishing difficulties. The tests of the mind and mentality were very difficult for him. Any hesitation could bring him into a disastrous state. The final stage was even more difficult to overcome. It was known that origin was extremely powerful, so it was not something that can be easily comprehended. After he got the 4 sword essences combined step by step, Jian Wushuang luckily comprehended a slight fraction of origin. However, he had never learnt about slaughter origin. Neither did he comprehend the killing sword essence. Therefore, it would be even more difficult for him to comprehend slaughter origin through the first test. Fortunately, the dreamland had been gradually enhancing his killing intent. He finished all the steps except the last one. The last one was the most important. Jian Wushuang made it in the end. Were the tests that my father passed before similar to mine? Jian Wushuang looked towards the Absolute Beauty and asked. Yes. The Absolute Beauty nodded. He comprehended slaughter origin in the illusory realm of slaughter, same as you did. The difference was that he spent 4 months on it while you just spent 3. To a certain extent, you are even stronger than your father. 3 months. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Did I stay in the dreamland for 3 months? He knew that the amount of people he had killed in the dreamland was considerable, but he didn't know how exactly many people he had killed, and how long he had been there. Now he knew. Young man, since you have passed the first test of the ancestors' land, you have become a disciple of the bloodline of sword ancestor since today. The Absolute Beauty said. Bloodline of the sword ancestor? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Let's talk about it outside. The Absolute Beauty walked outside the palace with the strong man. Jian Wushuang followed them at once. The Absolute Beauty led Jian Wushuang to an altar. The altar looked old, and nothing could be seen there except fused steely. In the right front of the altar there was a chain bridge. The iron bridge was extremely long and it extended to the deep into the ancestors' land. Standing at the altar, Jian Wushuang overlooked the far end of the chain bridge, without any objects obstructing his sight. Young man, what's your name? The Absolute Beauty looked towards Jian Wushuang and asked. Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang replied. Jian Wushuang? I am Jin Ling. Then the Absolute Beauty pointed to the strong man next to her and said, This is my second brother, Mu Shan. I believe you've already known that my brother and I are not humans. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Since Jian Wushuang entered the ancestors' land for the first time and glanced at the strongman Mu Shan, he had already known that Mu Shan was not a human being. "Actually, we are puppet fighters," said Jin Ling, "same as what I expected." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. Though he had guessed Jin Ling and Mu Shan's real identities long time ago, yet now he was still shocked lightly after Jin Ling confirmed it. It was known that normally puppet fighters never had intelligence. They just obeyed their master's orders unconditionally like tools. However, despite being puppet fighters, they were no weaker in intelligence than humans. He had never heard a puppet fighter like this before. Needless to say, such puppet fighters should be of extremely high level. Not sure about the level of their fighting capabilities, Jian Wushuang pondered. "I can tell that you have a lot of questions right now. Go ahead to ask me. Now you are the disciple of the bloodline of Sword Ancestor, so you are qualified to know some things," said Jin Ling. "I want to know what the ancestors' land is, and what is the relationship between it and me?" Jian Wushuang asked. "The ancestors' land is the cemetery for the Sword Ancestor." Jin Ling looked at Jian Wushuang. "As for the relationship between you, it is simple. You are the descendant of the bloodline of Sword Ancestor." "The descendant of a Sword Ancestor?" Jian Wushuang was stunned. Jin Ling explained. "You are indeed the descendant of the Sword Ancestors. Your identity can be reflected through your awakening of the Sword Soul, so you don't need to doubt it. Many years ago, there was a person of tremendous power existing both in the heaven and earth. He was the Sword Ancestor, the ancestor of the Sword Principle. He was the recognized number one in terms of the Sword Principle comprehension. Sword Ancestor built the bloodline of Sword Ancestor and made it into a super-powerful force. At the peak of the bloodline of Sword Ancestor, the strength they had far exceeds your imagination. However, 1,000 years ago, Sword Ancestor suddenly died without a reasonable explanation. After Sword Ancestor died, the bloodline of Sword Ancestor collapsed instantly. It was uprooted by another force, and the disciples there suffered cruel treatment from their enemies. Finally, only a few disciples survived, and they fled here later on. But they were unable to bring back the bloodline of Sword Ancestor again, so finally they were just killed. And afterwards, the Mansion of Sword Marquis emerged. Actually, the predecessor of the Mansion of Sword Marquis is the bloodline of Sword Ancestor. The disciples of the Mansion of Sword Marquis are all descendants of the bloodline of Sword Ancestor. Is it like this? Jian Wushuang secretly nodded. He was born in the Mansion of Sword Marquis, but he never knew such history there. At the same time, he was saddened by the current situation of the Mansion of Sword Marquis. After all, it had been a powerful sect before. "What is Sword Soul?" Jian Wushuang looked at Jin Ling and asked, "Why have people been trying to assassinate me ever since my Sword Soul was awakened?" Jian Wushuang had been eager to know this for some time. Blood Feather Tower never stopped attempting to assassinate him. What's worse, now the Holy Emperor Palace had taken part in the assassination. It was known that among the assassinations he suffered, several had made him nearly die. That was why he was so eager to know the reason. "I know this as well," Jin Ling said. "Sword Soul is the soul of the Sword Principle. It can only be awakened by the geniuses who are born with astounding talent. Even when the bloodline of Sword Ancestor was at its peak, only 2 or 3 geniuses awakened their Sword Soul over several decades. Even though the bloodline of Sword Ancestor has declined, your father and then you awakened the Sword Soul, which could only be called a miracle. As for the assassination, that was because the transcendent forces which toppled the bloodline of Sword Ancestor knew the existence of the Mansion of Sword Marquis a long time ago. However, powerful as the forces were, they were unable to completely eliminate the Mansion of Sword Marquis and finish the bloodline of Sword Ancestor due to some special reasons. Although they weren't able to completely destroy the bloodline of Sword Ancestor, they could stop it from re-emerging. Therefore, the transcendent forces had been sending people to watch the Mansion of Sword Marquis. The ordinary disciples in the Mansion of Sword Marquis wouldn't threaten them. Even if 1 or 2 disciples became geniuses, the forces wouldn't attach much weight to them. However, the Sword Soul, even in the bloodline of Sword Ancestor when in its peak time, The ones who are able to awaken the sword soul can be called the super geniuses. Such geniuses will gain great achievements in the future, as long as they do not stumble midway. The ones who are more powerful can be absolute experts. Only such geniuses can attract the Force's attention and make them fear. So, no sooner had the Mansion of Sword Marquis possessed a super genius who awakened the sword soul, than the violent Force immediately took actions to eliminate him. That's why your father and you became their assassination targets. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was stunned. Is this the reason? Unbelievable, he muttered. The people who had awakened the sword soul were all super geniuses. They would make the transcendent Force fear the repercussions. That was why the Force wanted to kill them. But the ordinary disciples in the Mansion of Sword Marquis did not attract the Transcendent Force's attention at all. You just said that the Transcendent Force is unable to destroy the Mansion of Sword Marquis due to some special reasons. What are the reasons? Who is the violent Force? Is it the Holy Emperor Palace? Jian Wushuang asked without stopping. Jinling furrowed her brow slightly, shook her head and replied, "The questions you are asking are beyond your authority. I can't tell you." What? Jian Wushuang was astonished. Jinling continued, "The 3 tests in the Ancestors' Land represent 3 kinds of identities and authorities. You just passed the first test. So being an ordinary disciple in the bloodline of Sword Ancestor, you are just authorized to know some basic questions about the bloodline of Sword Ancestor. The questions you just asked belong to the scope of the core disciple, only they are authorized to know. To become a core disciple, you need to pass the second test. However, you are not qualified to challenge the second test at all with your current realm." Jian Wushuang's expression changed, but he soon calmed down by taking a deep breath. "Do you have any other questions?" Jinling looked towards Jian Wushuang and asked. "No." Jian Wushuang shook his head and replied. He already knew a lot. At least he knew the reason why he had been chased. He also knew the relationship between him and the Ancestors' Land. It was already enough. For the other questions, he had to put them aside and figure them out later. Good then. You are too weak right now, so it's pointless even if you know a lot. Your current priority is to try your utmost to increase your strength, Jinling said with a smile. You passed the first test of Ancestors' Land. As per the rule, you can get 3 opportunities. 3 opportunities? Jian Wushuang immediately looked towards Jinling and asked with excitement. Opportunity and danger often accompanied one another. During the first test, he'd almost found himself dead several times. Finally, he passed it, which meant he got 3 opportunities. It's just he did not know what they were. 3 opportunities total. The first one is that you may freely ask for 3 things. They can be nature treasures, manuals about cultivation method, or rare elixirs. But the condition is they must apply to the authority of the ordinary disciples. Tell me, what is it you need? Jinling asked. Jian Wushuang at once set himself into thinking. He could only ask for 3 things, so he must think about it carefully. I've made up my mind. Jian Wushuang suddenly looked up and said, Tell me. Jinling replied, I need a treasure that can help me to recover the dantian and strength, said Jian Wushuang. Recover the dantian? Jinling looked at him in surprise. My father's dantian was destroyed. Jian Wushuang explained. I see. Jinling nodded slightly and then immediately said, There are 2 kinds of treasures that can recover the dantian. One is 7-colored soul-seizing vine, and the other is reversal red scorching elixir. Both can recondition the broken dantian. However, their disparity in effect is enormous. The colorful spiritual vine is a kind of nature treasure, which is extremely rare and precious. It can not only help someone to recondition the dantian, but can also make the dantian be more vast after the reconditioning. The vast dantian will greatly enhance a person's strength in activating and storing up spiritual power. With the 7-colored soul-seizing vine, your father's broken dantian could be reconditioned, but he has to rely on himself to accumulate the spiritual power. That is to say, his recultivation must be started with the spirit path. Of course, his recultivation speed will be extremely fast. It won't take long for him to reach the realm he was at before. In the future, he will have more opportunities to challenge the higher levels. However, the reversal red scorching elixir is a little bit extreme. It can recondition your father's dantian as well. The difference is that, after the reconditioning, your father's strength can be immediately recovered. At the same time, the reversal red scorching elixir will substantially extract your father's potential, and then make his strength directly ascend to a higher level. Needless to say, the extraction of the potential is helpful. However, it has a disadvantage as well. The disadvantage is that once your father greatly enhances his strength, his realm will be hindered. In the future, he will barely be able to improve his realm. Speaking of this, Jinling paused and looked towards Jian Wushuang one more time. Between the two treasures, the seven-colored soul-seizing vine has a higher value, but you are not qualified to get it yet with your current authority, so you can only choose the reversal red scorching elixir. Hearing what Jinling said, Jian Wushuang felt a little bit disappointed. Between the seven-colored soul-seizing vine and the reversal red scorching elixir, Jian Wushuang was inclined to the former. Although his father needed to recultivate his spirit path after the dantian got reconditioned by the seven-colored soul-seizing vine, he had potential to keep enhancing his strength in the future. Meanwhile, the reversal red scorching elixir was too extreme. Though it could help his father greatly enhance his strength, his potential would be greatly consumed. In the future, he wouldn't be able to enhance himself further at all, which meant it would be impossible for him to be a top expert. It was a shame that Jian Wushuang's was unable to get him the seven-colored soul-seizing vine due to his current level of authority. Then I'll take the reversal red scorching elixir. Better than nothing. After I get my father out, I will give the elixir to him. He will need to decide if he should take it, said Jian Wushuang. Jinling nodded slightly and said, "What about the remaining two items? What you want?" "I want two sword skills. One applies to world origin and the other one applies to slaughter origin," replied Jian Wushuang. He had just comprehended world origin and slaughter origin not long ago. Having comprehended the origin, he naturally needed the corresponding original sword technique to perfectly display his origin strength. It is easy to get a sword skill that applies to world origin. The selfless sword technique I gave you before is a kind of original sword technique, and it is intended to be directed towards world origin. However, you only have the first half of the volume, and now I will give the second half of the volume to you. What do you think?" Jinling said. "That's fine." Jian Wushuang nodded. He had been studying the selfless sword technique. However, the best he could do so far was the third movement sky isolating form. However, he knew clearly how fierce the selfless sword technique had been a long time ago. Previously he had succeeded in combining 3 sword essences, and then 4 sword essences, but neither could completely activate the real power of the sword skill. The power of the sword skill could only be perfectly displayed by comprehending the origin. What's more, the origin must be world origin. Even more, the first half volume of the selfless sword technique contains 6 movements. It should be the same for the other half, so there would be a total of 12 swordsmanship types for the whole volume, which was plenty for Jian Wushuang to study. As for the sword skill that applies to slaughter origin, Jinling frowned slightly. "What's wrong? You don't have it?" Jian Wushuang asked with doubt. "No, we have it. The problem is, we have too many," Jinling replied. "Too many?" Jian Wushuang was stunned. "Young man, you should know that the bloodline of sword ancestor specializes in sword principle, and that the sword principle is a way of killing. The warriors who study the sword principle can only completely display their killing abilities by comprehending slaughter origin. Therefore, when the bloodline of sword ancestor was at its peak, plenty of experts chose slaughter origin to comprehend. Sword ancestor is an example. His best skill is slaughter origin. In the bloodline of sword ancestor, a great number of experts chose to comprehend slaughter origin. That's why the sword skills that apply to slaughter origin are more than that of other origins. As per your current authority level, you can get more than 100 sword skills that apply to slaughter origin. Let's do it this way. I'll give you a sword skill list, and you can take your time to pick one you want," Jinling uttered while giving Jian Wushuang the list. Jian Wushuang gave a glance at the list. Numerous sword skill names and their descriptions were immediately visible. Jian Wushuang started to review them at once. In a second, he fixed his eyes on a sword skill. Blood Emptying Technique. It was a sword skill with extremely potent and monstrous power. There were 3 sword movements for the Blood Emptying Technique, which was obviously too few compared to the Selfless Sword Technique, as there were 12 for the latter. However, in terms of value, the Blood Emptying Technique was better than the Selfless Sword Technique. Though there are only 3 sword movements for the Blood Emptying Technique, every movement was super powerful. What's more, each movement is a killing move. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shining. Killing power was the most important characteristic to Slaughter Origin, so he should cultivate the killing move with that startling power and get the best use out of it. That way, he could completely activate his killing power. I've decided. I'm going to choose the Blood Emptying Technique. Jian Wushuang told her his decision. Blood Emptying Technique? Jinling was surprised, but nodded. A moment later, Jinling took out the 3 things that Jian Wushuang wanted. They were Reversal Red Scorching Elixir, the other half of the volume of Selfless Sword Technique, and Blood Emptying Technique. I've given your first opportunity. As for the second one, you can stay in the Rainstorm Palace for a month. Jinling gave Jian Wushuang a glance, and then continued, Follow me. Rainstorm Palace? Jian Wushuang looked a little excited. Soon after, he moved his paces and followed Jinling. He came to a corner in the ancestors' land under the guidance of Jinling. By then, what appeared in front of him was a huge mountain with a cave underneath. Is this cave the Rainstorm Palace? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, said Jinling. Don't look down on this cave. You will find the inside is amazing when you go in. But remember that you can only stay here for 1 month. How much strength you can enhance in this time frame will depend on you. Jian Wushuang nodded continuously, and soon after stepped inside the cave. The inside of the cave was enormous, and the entire cave was filled with a gloomy draft. Jian Wushuang looked around carefully. Suddenly, a huge painting that was surrounded by the gloomy draft was dimly visible. Painting! Jian Wushuang was a little bit excited. At the same time, he was a little bit nervous. He couldn't see the painting clearly until he got closer. This was a rainstorm picture. The rainstorm picture was filled up by a large number of raindrops. Jian Wushuang counted them carefully and found the quantity was about 1,000. These raindrops... Jian Wushuang couldn't help looking at the raindrops carefully. In Jian Wushuang's eyes, the raindrops turned to a myriad of sword light. In a little while, they turned to numerous violent sword essences and flew to the 9th heaven. With the perspective of world origin, Jian Wushuang found that the sword light looked so miraculous, embracing everything in the heaven and earth, as if inside each of them was the core of the world. Through the sword light, he even saw the scenes when he displayed the 4th, 5th and 6th movements of the Selfless Sword Technique. However, with Slaughter Origin perspective, Jian Wushuang found that the sword light contained brutal killing essences. They seemed to be slashing or hacking. All of them looked fierce and invincible. Different origins afforded him different scenes. However, both ended up at the same point. Jian Wushuang immersed himself in the raindrops. He couldn't help pulling out the triple kill sword from the back and then started to display the movements. He totally forgot the existence of time and himself. The entire Rainstorm Palace was actually the Rainstorm picture. Furthermore, this Rainstorm picture was aimed at the origin. In terms of value, the Rainstorm picture was much better than the Sword Tomb where Jian Wushuang had stayed for 2 years. His meditation at the Rainstorm picture totally consumed Jian Wushuang. So much so that he didn't notice how time flew at all. A month has passed. Come out! Jinling suddenly shouted. She had been waiting outside the Rainstorm Palace the entire time. Come out! Come out! Come out! The shouting reverberated in Jian Wushuang's head, and it got louder and louder. Finally, he woke up. Soon after, Jian Wushuang bounded up and in no time landed outside the Rainstorm Palace. How are you feeling? Jinling and Mu Shan rushed over to take a look. With a tint of regret, Jian Wushuang sighed. Not bad. But it's a pity that the time is so short. Indeed, it was only a month's time, way too short. He was too engrossed in the meditation of the Rainstorm picture and had already long forgotten that time existed. He felt like he was only inside for a short while, but a month had passed just like that. Curiosity brought Mushan to ask, "Surely your skills have improved by a lot?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. Although the meditation only lasted for a month, he was able to understand the sword light and sword essence of the origin even deeper from the raindrops. It elevated his skills in world origin and slaughter origin. He even mastered the 4th and 5th moves of the selfless sword technique. It seemed like it would not be long before he mastered the 6th one as well. He has also mastered the 1st move of the blood emptying technique. That all happened within a month only. If he did not close himself away from the world, it would have taken him more than half a year to master the 4th and 5th moves of the selfless sword technique completely. It was even more amazing that he managed to get the hang of the 1st move of the blood emptying technique so quickly. It was meant to take ages for one to comprehend, but he managed to do it within a month, thanks to the rainstorm picture. Staying in the rainstorm palace for a month has helped me to understand the origin and master my swordsmanship greatly, said Jian Wushuang. Jin Ling replied, "The rainstorm palace was your 2nd opportunity. Now your 3rd opportunity is here, and that's the Purple Crystal Lake." "Purple Crystal Lake?" Jian Wushuang repeated with a tint of expectation. He did not know what this Purple Crystal Lake was all about, but from what he had gathered during his stay at the Rainstorm Palace, he can be certain that this lake was like none other. At least it would be of huge benefit to him. Jin Ling glanced at Mu Shan and ordered, "Mu Shan, you bring him there." "Yes." Mu Shan nodded upon his orders and proceeded to lead the way. Under Mu Shan's guidance, Jian Wushuang arrived in front of a purple lake. The lake is neither big nor small. The water is as clear as crystal, emitting a faint fragrance. It was like a good old wine, waiting to lure others into its beauty. "This is the Purple Crystal Lake," Mu Shan said. "This lake is made from purple crystal spiritual liquid." "Purple crystal spiritual liquid?" Jian Wushuang's gaze was broken and he had a dumbstruck expression. Purple crystal spiritual liquid had characteristics similar to the primordial spiritual liquid. They were both the purest energy sources in the mortal world. What was different was that the primordial spiritual liquid only works for the beginner warriors in the spirit path and level of transforming sea. On the other hand, the purple crystal spiritual liquid was greatly beneficial even to the experts of the Yin-Yang Void Realm. In fact, there were many experts in the Yin-Yang Void Realm that transacts using purple crystal spiritual liquid instead of wealth. In the Tianzong dynasty, an expert of the initial Yin Void Realm, whose value was worth 100 drops of the liquid, was considered impressive. But right now, what was with this lake full of the powerful liquid? Amazed, Jian Wushuang proclaimed, "I'm sure all of the purple crystal spiritual liquid in the Tianzong dynasty combined would not make up even a tenth of this lake?" Mu Shan replied, "Jian Wushuang, you can cultivate at the lake for 2 months. During this period, you can do whatever you want with the liquid. 2 months later, I hope your realm can greatly improve." Mu Shan took a glance at Jian Wushuang and walked away. Jian Wushuang was left alone by the purple crystal lake. 2 months. I can cultivate as I like for 2 months? There was a glow of excitement in his eyes, and he jumped in without hesitation. Plop! Jian Wushuang had landed in the lake. His head resurfaced above the waters and he eyed his surroundings. "Let me see how much I can gain from a huge lake like this in 2 months? Jian Wushuang summoned his heavenly creation skill immediately without hesitation. While the effects took place, the waters of the lake stirred like a tornado. The waves were raging wildly while Jian Wushuang remained on the water surface. A tremendous force that swallowed from within arose and the purple crystal liquid gushed into his body at the speed of lightning. This is the furthest the heavenly creation skill could do. Crazy swallow. Taking in everything. The spiritual power inside him started to rise at a puzzling speed. After sending Jian Wushuang to the purple crystal lake, Mu Shan left and came back to Jin Ling. "I have already sent him to the lake," Mu Shan said. "Okay." Jin Ling nodded and continued. 2 months is not long. Neither is it short. I wonder how much his cultivation of spiritual power can improve by then. He has already reached exceptional gold core realm. although it happened not long ago. As long as he absorbs the purple crystal spiritual liquid as much as he can, then the initial void realm is not far away. If he is lucky, he might just reach the profound void realm, Mu Shan said. Profound void realm? Jinling frowned and said, I remember Jian Nantian also cultivated at the purple crystal lake for 2 months before hitting initial void realm. He even hit the peak, falling short of the profound void realm by a tiny bit. This fella is even more outstanding than his father, being able to break through the completion of the void realm. He has a lot of potentials. Jin Ling and Mu Shan were busily engrossed in their discussion and were oblivious to whatever was happening in the lake. If they were to take a look at what was happening, they would want to take back their words because the purple crystal lake had gone haywire completely. Jian Wushuang had unleashed his heavenly creation skill to its extreme, and the wolfing speed was unbelievably fast. After all, he had cultivated the heavenly creation skill. It was just like back in the days when he was still on the divine path level, drawing power from the primordial spiritual liquid at Nine Wolves Mountain. He was doing it at a speed much faster than any other normal warrior. A regular elixir that raises spiritual power needs a couple of months to be completely digested, but Jian Wushuang only needs a day. Naturally, the speed at which he was harnessing the liquid would be noticeably faster than normal people's. This was the heavenly creation skill, a cultivation method that was against the natural order. Both Jin Ling and Mu Shan agreed that Jian Wushuang would surely reach the initial void realm in his 2 months at Purple Crystal Lake. They were even hopeful that he can reach the profound void realm. But in reality, on the 3rd day, by the 3rd day of his cultivation, Jian Wushuang's spiritual power in his gold core has reached its extreme. After harnessing enough power, he tried to make a breakthrough to the void realm directly. With such a powerful liquid as his foundation, Jian Wushuang seemed confident. He did not require any external help and went straight ahead with the majestic spiritual power stored in him. He succeeded. By his 3rd day of cultivation, he reached the initial void realm. After that, he continued to gain strength. By the 10th day, he once again outdid himself and reached the profound void realm. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. In the ancestors' land, Jin Ling and Mu Shan stood together. 2 months have passed. Let's go and look at how that fellow is doing, said Jin Ling. I bet that he has already reached the profound void realm. Mu Shan laughed. Maybe, but maybe not. Jin Ling smiled. The duo walked side by side towards Purple Crystal Lake and arrived not long after. But when they truly saw what was going on in the lake, both of them were beyond shock. What's this? Jin Ling widened her eyes, staring into the lake. The endless lake before their eyes was as vast as before. But Jin Ling could tell with a glance that the waters had clearly sunk more than a meter. Back in the days when Jian Nantian cultivated here for 2 months, there were no significant changes to the lake. But now, 1 meter. Just how much purple crystal spiritual liquid had been lost for such a vast lake to fall by a meter? It has only been a mere 2 months. How is it possible for him to absorb so much of the purple crystal spiritual liquid? Jin Ling was shocked. This is impossible. How is this big difference possible? Mu Shan was also taken aback. Even if 10 void experts tried to absorb the same amount in the same duration, it would still be an impossible feat, this fella's strength. Jin Ling quickly turned towards Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the lake. At this moment, Jian Wushuang had stopped absorbing the liquid. His eyes were both opened and emitted a sparkling light. There was a suffocating aura coming out from his body. Rumble. This aura turned into raging wild waves that swept across the purple crystal lake. Upon sensing his aura from the release of spiritual power, both Jin Ling and Mu Shan seemed to have blanked out. Peak of the void realm? He has actually reached the peak of the void realm. In just a mere 2 months, he went from achieving the exceptional gold core realm to breaking through 4 realms and now actually reaching the peak of the void realm? How is this possible? The duo may have seen and heard many great things, but they were stunned. Indeed, Jian Wushuang's mad accession in power was puzzling. It would not be possible for any normal person to do the same, even if they were to cultivate in the lake itself. However, the duo was unaware that the cultivation of Jian Wushuang is a heavenly creation skill. It is a cultivation method against the natural order like no other. Poof! Jian Wushuang resurfaced above the waters and appeared in front of the duo. He shrugged his shoulders, which upon usage of force, caused all bones of his body to snap one after another. He then held both of his hands together tightly, allowing an explosive force to gather in his hands. Peak of the Yin Void Realm. Jian Wushuang's eyes emitted a strong ray of light. That's a pity. If you gave me half a month more, I would be confident of harnessing enough spiritual power to forcefully break through and reach the Yang Void Realm. He may have said the words himself, but he did not feel that it was a pity at all. After all, his power has risen like crazy the past 2 months. If he were to reach the Yang Void Realm, that would be quite awesome. Right now, I am already at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. In fact, the tip. My spiritual power has clearly improved so much more compared to during the exceptional Gold Core Realm. I should count my blessings. Jian Wushuang laughed. Moreover, his cultivation is a heavenly creation skill. Each step was against the natural order, but yet unique on its own. A normal warrior would reach the Yin-Yang Void Realm, while a heavenly creation skill would cause the Yin and Yang to break. Naturally, it was bound to be different. However, this difference could not be further delved into in the ancestor's land. He can only do it after leaving. Fella, I am very curious. What is your secret? If it is not a huge secret, it would not be possible for you to absorb that much purple crystal spiritual liquid in such a short time. Neither would your spiritual power improve tremendously. Jin Ling stared into the eyes of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's gaze did not waver. There was indeed a huge secret of his, which was the heavenly creation skill. But this secret would remain a secret under all circumstances. Forget it. Everyone has their own secrets. I'm too lazy to dig deeper into this, Jin Ling said casually and added. The third opportunity has already been given to you. Now you can leave the ancestors' land. Leave right now. Jian Wushuang touched his nose and asked, Can't I accept the second test after all this? Second test. Jin Ling smirked. Fella, I am not looking down on you. Although your spiritual power might have improved tremendously these 2 months, you are still not qualified for the test. The second test of the ancestors' land is targeted at experts of divine transcendence. Furthermore, the first and second tests are largely different. The first is much more relaxed. Hence, even though you only reached the exceptional Gold Core Realm, you would have equal chances of passing it as long as you can go against the natural order. But there is no way you will pass the test without divine transcendence. Is it really like this? Jian Wushuang frowned. He initially thought that he could be considered qualified to accept the second test, especially after his improvement. But it seemed like he had underestimated the difficulty of the test by this ancestor's land. If the second test requires experts of divine transcendence, then what about the third one? Jian Wushuang asked out of curiosity. Fella, you should prepare to leave. But before that, hand me the triple kill sword, Jin Ling said. Triple kill sword? Jian Wushuang retrieved the sword from this back and held it in his hand. After a moment of hesitation, he handed it to Jin Ling. Jin Ling received it and touched it gently. She shook her head and laughed. Indeed, you had a peerless killing sword in your possession, but you did not know how to incur its power. Peerless killing sword? Jian Wushuang could not help but look at Jin Ling. This triple kill sword was the first sword of killing from the mansion of Sword Marquis. It was also the only pledge of entry into the ancestors' land. Jian Wushuang had had the sword for ages but never had any queries about it. At most, the sword edge was sharper and the aura was stiffer. Regarding its power, he had no idea that the triple kill sword had other uses. Fella, wait for me here for a while. I will return it to you later, Jin Ling said. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded. Jin Ling left with the sword in her hand and Jian Wushuang stood there, waiting in silence. Not long after, Jin Ling returned and threw the sword at him. When he held on to it, Jian Wushuang felt a burst within his heart. He found out that the triple kill sword now contained much more hostility than before. Jian Wushuang stirred the body of triple kill sword with his fingers. Yet the triple-kill sword, seeming to possess a soul, was trembling slightly. Simultaneously surprised and delighted, he felt waves from the triple-kill sword. It seems that the triple-kill sword is different from before, Jian Wushuang couldn't help saying. Of course it's different now, Jinling answered while snorting. How could it just be a normal weapon if it is used to enter the ancestors' land? Because it hasn't been involved in battle for several years, its sword spirit was already asleep. I only just woke it up. Sword spirit. Jian Wushuang winced. Little guy, you don't know what sword spirit is? Jinling said and looked to Jiang Wushuang. Jian Wushuang nodded. Aren't you ignorant? Jinling smiled and shook his head. Ah yes, the bloodline of sword ancestor is on the decline, so their horizon has lowered. Listen up. The triple-kill sword is not a normal weapon, but a magic weapon. The weapons are divided into 3 grades. The 3rd grade is normal, the 2nd grade is spiritual, while the 1st grade is masterful. Each grade is divided into 3 levels: inferior, medium, and superior. The triple-kill sword in your hand is a superior 2nd grade magic weapon. Normally, it possesses a soul, but it has fallen asleep. This happened because when your father fought with the experts, it got hurt. Alas, its power got buried. I have woken up its sword spirit and its power has recovered. But the triple-kill sword hasn't completely recovered. It fell down to superior 3rd grade. I see, Jian Wushuang murmured while nodding. Feeling the power of the triple-kill sword, he could not help but be shocked. He felt that the triple-kill sword was so powerful now. Has it not completely recovered? How can I make it recover to its optimum power? Jian Wushuang asked. I have said that the triple-kill sword is a sword of killing, eager for blood. If you want to recover its power, you have to kill others with it as far as possible. The more kills, the more powerful man you kill, the faster it recovers. Even when the triple-kill sword recovers to its optimum in the future, continue to use it for kills to improve its grade, Jinling said. I see. Jian Wushuang nodded seriously while holding the triple-kill sword tightly, with a glimmer of expectation. Jiang Wushuang imagined a scene of the triple-kill sword at its optimum and stronger than ever before. In fact, not only the magic weapons are divided into 3 grades, but also origin manuals, Jinling suddenly said. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked towards her. Jinling continued, the origin manual is also divided into 3 grades, while each grade is divided into 3 levels: inferior, medium, and superior. Just like the 2 original sword techniques you got, the selfless sword technique and blood emptying technique. The selfless sword technique is the medium 3rd grade manual. The blood emptying technique is superior 3rd grade. Jinling stopped and looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had a serious look on his face. He didn't know that the magic weapons and origin manuals were divided into 3 grades until now. In my opinion, the selfless sword technique and blood emptying technique are very powerful. The blood emptying technique is a sword skill on the 3rd grade. What about the 2nd grade sword technique or the 1st grade sword technique? Jian Wushuang said with shock. The 3rd grade sword skill was also powerful. Wouldn't the power of the 2nd grade sword technique and 1st grade sword technique be more shocking? If a manual is the 3rd grade, its power is incredible. In fact, many origin manuals are of low quality. The selfless sword technique and blood emptying technique you have are very good and useful enough for you. Even the elders of divine transcendence can't possess the 2nd grade or 1st grade sword skill. Of course, if you reach the level of divine transcendence, come back to the ancestors' land and pass the test. Then you will get a chance to gain the 2nd grade sword technique. Jinling smiled and said. Jian Wushuang fell silent. Divine transcendence? His strength was enhanced by the cultivation of spiritual power from Purple Crystal Lake. But he just reached the peak of the Yin Void realm. There was a long way for him to reach divine transcendence. The level was hard to break out of. Okay, I have already said what I have to. You may leave. When you've reached the level of divine transcendence, make your return, Jinling said. Thank you. Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude and was led away by Mu Shan. He then left the ancestors' land by wormhole. In dark forest, A figure abruptly shot up to the sky while the strong air swept across, breaking up the silence of this place. Half of a year. Jiang Wushuang clenched his fists, curling up a smile. Previously, when he stayed in the ancestors' land for 2 years, he made great progress. Although he stayed only half a year this time, his progress was more apparent. His cultivation of spiritual power was directly stepped into the peak of the Yin Void realm from the exceptional Gold Core realm, which was breaking through 4 realms. At the same time, he also understood slaughter origin and entered the way of killing. Having meditated for a month in Rainstorm Palace, his world origin and slaughter origin had greatly improved. The same went for his swordsmanship. It was certain that his strength had experienced a radical improvement within half of a year. Half a year ago, I went to the ancestors' land directly after returning from the easternmost hunting. I don't know how the Tianzong dynasty has been like in the half-year, Jian Wushuang murmured. I must be steady. I am cultivating the heavenly creation skill. When I step into the Yin-Yang Void realm, I would meet with the Yin and Yang breaking. But how am I to break it? Immediately, Jian Wushuang found a place in the dark forest, sat down and then began to operate the heavenly creation skill. All the movements of the heavenly creation skill were unbelievable and different. As for the 9th heaven of divine path, the ultimate spiritual sea, and the supreme golden pill realm, each step was much powerful than a common warrior. As a counterpart to the Yin-Yang Void realm, the Yin and Yang breaking naturally was bound to be different. Jian Wushuang sat and studied for a long time. Finally, he understood the Yin and Yang breaking. Jian Wushuang operated his spiritual power. As it went on, there was a strong spiritual power that gradually broke out from his body. In the spiritual power, there was a shadow. The shadow was like a baby, but its volume was small. As the shadow appeared in the void, the vast expanse of spiritual power of heaven and earth gathered toward it, swaddling it like a baby. As more spiritual power gathered together, a figure whose bodyline or appearance was the same as Jian Wushuang appeared next to him. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, looking at the other man who looked just like him. His lips could not help but curl into a smile. The Yin-Yang doppelganger is here. The way of martial arts, the 7th realm of spirit path, transforming C from spiritual power, primordial golden pill realm, Yin-Yang void realm and divine transcendence. In the Yin-Yang void realm, there would be a change from the original primordial golden pill realm to a nascent soul. The nascent soul would then absorb spiritual power, the core of a warrior. The way that heavenly creation skill reached the Yin-Yang void realm was to change from gold core to nascent soul. There were not 1 but 2 nascent souls. One of them dominated the self and the other reconstructed the body, making up the Yin-Yang doppelganger. This was the Yin and Yang breaking. Jian Wushuang already forged his Yin-Yang doppelganger. Not only the body and appearance, but the cultivation of spiritual power was exactly like him. The only difference was their thoughts. Even though the Yin-Yang doppelganger was dominated by the self, each persona could possess an independent consciousness. In other words, the doppelganger was able to get out, experience and train independently or meditate the sword essence and the origin, which would never bother the self. This meant that a person became 2 persons. For the Yin-Yang doppelganger, the self was a root. As long as the self was alive, the doppelganger never died. Even if the doppelganger was killed, it still could be forged again by the self. A frightening ability. The frightening supernatural skill. Jian Wushuang looked excitedly to his Yin-Yang doppelganger with eyes full of wonder. Doppelganger. An independent consciousness. The doppelganger could understand the origin and have an adventure by itself. Previously, a person would meditate and cultivate alone, but it was 2 people doing the job at the same time now. Thus, the speed of cultivation naturally doubled. The doppelganger and the self could be divided and also reintegrated with each other. After Jian Wushuang used his mind to give an order, his Yin-Yang doppelganger began to slowly approach him. It merged with him and then separated from him. The separated Yin-Yang doppelganger became increasingly ruthless and brutal, emanating a scary killing intent. Conversely, Jian Wushuang's aura became easygoing and tolerant. The self stood with the Yin-Yang doppelganger. One embraced everything. The other killed the world. They had completely different aura. If not the same appearance, they would not be considered the same person. From today, the Inyang doppelganger will focus on meditating slaughter origin while I meditate world origin. We work in cooperation with a division of labor, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. The Inyang doppelganger could separate his meditation into two parts. Now, the self of Jian Wushuang had no meditation over slaughter origin, merely the meditation over world origin. The self meditated world origin while the doppelganger meditated slaughter origin. They each had a task to do. However, if the two are integrated, the self could perform both meditations. The special ability made Jian Wushuang greatly surprised. With the Inyang doppelganger, it would be much more convenient for him in the future. Not only was it useful in meditating the origin, but also many other things that the self failed to do. With the doppelganger, he could even explore some risky place. After all, if the doppelganger died, the self could forge another one. It all needed just some time and energy. It was a pity that if Jian Wushuang broke through the Yin Void realm, his supreme gold core realm strength would be substantially weakened. His supreme gold core allowed his spiritual power to improve 100-fold. However, after supreme gold core became the nascent soul, the outbreak of spiritual power only improved by 12. Jian Wushuang could also do nothing about this. It was similar to the situation when he broke through the transforming sea realm and reached the gold core realm. While he was in the transforming sea realm, he was a warrior with ultimate spiritual sea. His spiritual power was endless. When he reached the supreme gold core realm, his spiritual power was just weakened to 10 times of normal warriors. When I reach the peak of the Yin Void realm, my outbreak of spiritual power is 10 times of the counterpart. It is equivalent to the top of initial Yang Void realm, even stronger and comparable with the profound Yang Void realm, Jian Wushuang said to himself. Only the outbreak of power is comparable to the profound Yang Void realm. Adding to the meditation of the sword essence and origin, he was far stronger than the one in the profound Yang Void realm. As for how strong it was, he did not know. He needed to fight with a suitable expert. Only then would he find out the strength. Go back to the Tianzong dynasty. Jian Wushuang moved his body and then went forward to the other side of the dark forest, at Tiannan province. In a short moment he set off. Zoom! Jian Wushuang suddenly stopped on a void and looked down. There was a fierce battle taking place on the ground. It was normal to battle in a place like the dark forest as it had many spirit beasts and was suitable for warriors to train. Jian Wushuang was not concerned over the battle, but he chose to stop because he recognized the uniform worn by one of the experts that he once saw at the Nine Emperors sect. The Nine Emperors sect? Jian Wushuang mumbled and raised his eyebrows. It was a fierce battle on the ground. Haha, little girl. Come with us. If I catch you, I don't think the fat guy in the pavilion of raindrops wouldn't surrender to us. A purple-haired elder gave an insidious smile and said coolly. In front of him, there was a coquettish lady with the graceful figure. The coquettish lady's beautiful face looked chilling at this moment, and she clenched her teeth, thrusting at her enemies with a blood-red spear. The coquettish lady was attacked by the 3 men whose cultivation of spiritual power was not weaker than her. Although the coquettish lady gave all her might, she was still completely suppressed by them. She would fail sooner or later. There were multiple corpses laying next to her. The corpses were the lady's teammates. Chi! A sword flew past and the coquettish lady was cut with a bloody gash on her arm. A sharp jabbing pain of her arm made her palm loose. The blood-red spear fell to the ground, but she still desperately continued fighting back. Jie, you are really tenacious. The glum elder smiled coolly and said. Several experts of the Nine Emperors sect stood beside him, watching with interest. For them, the coquettish lady was already doomed. However, at this point, whoosh! A figure appeared suddenly in front of the coquettish lady. The 3 men were shocked, but their power was unabated. Jian Wushuang looked coolly. Seeing the 3 forces move fiercely toward him, he did not react. Suddenly, his body formed a strong wind, sweeping from the ground. The 3 forces immediately fell apart, and even the 3 experts of the Gold Core realm who jointly attacked the coquettish lady were forced to fall back due to the puff of wind. Who is it? You are courting death. Where did the boy come from? You dare to meddle in the affairs of the Nine Emperors sect. With several snapping sounds going off, the glum expert and his people charged forward and attacked Jian Wushuang without any words. Jian Wushuang did not show his move. The moment he raised his head, a terrifying killing intent gushed from his body. A sinister killing intent filled the air. Transparent blades made of pure spiritual power suddenly emerged from the air in front of Jian Wushuang. These transparent blades flew out swiftly and smoothly across the void, appearing in front of the glum elder. What? The glum elder could not react in time at all. Chi! 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 The transparent blade easily penetrated body after body. The glum elder and his people widened their eyes and then fell to the ground. In just a moment, the experts from the 9 Emperors sect were all killed. This? The coquettish lady was stunned. But Jian Wushuang did not care at all. Turning around, he looked at the coquettish lady and asked, "I overheard from these people that you are from the Pavilion of Raindrops?" "Yes." The coquettish lady nodded. "Then let me ask you, what is your relationship with Tang Wuji from the Pavilion of Raindrops?" Jian Wushuang inquired. "Tang Wuji? He is my brother. He is now the pavilion master of the Pavilion of Raindrops," answered the coquettish lady. "You are the sister of Tang Wuji?" Jian Wushuang's face had unbelief written all over it. Tang Wuji was a person Jian Wushuang met during the easternmost hunting. Back then, he knew that Tang Wuji was from the Pavilion of Raindrops. He had also heard that the place had been destroyed by the 9 Emperors sect. Tang Wuji was definitely a big, fat, ugly man. Therefore, it was hard to imagine that his sister could be so beautiful with a figure that was even more enchanting. Now, things are getting interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. The Pavilion of Raindrops was well known all throughout the city. A few years ago, the Pavilion of Raindrops held a lot of influence in the Tiannan province. They were especially outstanding in the providing information. However, later news spread that the Pavilion of Raindrops angered the 9 Emperors sect who later destroyed it. Just half a year ago, the Pavilion of Raindrops' young master Tang Wuji returned and spent a great deal of money to rebuild the pavilion. The newly constructed Pavilion of Raindrops was much stronger than before. In the headquarters of the Pavilion of Raindrops lay a secret chamber. "Gentlemen, the 9 Emperors sect are invading fiercely. We must use all our might to deal with them. Otherwise, if we are careless, the Pavilion of Raindrops will die an irrevocable death," the stocky middle-aged man Tang Wuji said in a low tone. "Pavilion Master, in my personal opinion, let us accept the Ouyang clan's request. With the Ouyang clan supporting us, we do not have to worry at all about the 9 Emperors sect," a man with dashing eyebrows said in a low tone. "Agree to the Ouyang clan's requests? Impossible." Tang Wuji shook his head decisively. "If it was only a matter of listening or following their orders, I would still consider. But to admit the Pavilion of Raindrops into the dark hall of the Ouyang clan is out of the question. Even if the Pavilion of Raindrops were to disappear right at this moment, I still would never agree to the Ouyang clan's conditions." Tang Wuji's eyes flickered seriously and his voice was as strong as steel. He had no trace of indecisiveness. At this precise moment, the door to the secret chamber suddenly opened. A servant of the Pavilion of Raindrops walked in and greeted respectfully. "Pavilion Master, Miss Schwer has returned. She mentioned that a man has come to find you. Previously, when Miss Schwer was in the dark forest, she was attacked by experts from the 9 Emperors sect. It was this man who saved Miss Schwer." "Ha!" Tang Wuji tremored, his gaze burning with irritation. "The 9 Emperors are so despicable. They even dared to send people to catch my sister. Let Schwer and her savior in." "Yes, master." The servant promptly retreated to complete his order. Not long after, the coquettish lady and Jian Wushuang walked into the secret chamber together. "Schwer." Tang Wuji could not help but smile upon seeing the coquettish lady. "Brother?" The coquettish lady ran hastily to Tang Wuji and said, "I almost fell into the hands of the 9 Emperors sect this time, but he saved me. You have to thank him as well on my behalf." "Is it so?" Tang Wuji said with a smile, casting his gaze on Jian Wushuang. Taking a look, Tang Wuji could not believe his eyes. You You are elder brother? Tang Wuji's voice was so agitated that he started stuttering. Tang Wuji, long time no see. Jian Wushuang's face cracked into a smile. Haha, boss, it really is you. Tang Wuji laughed heartily and embraced Jian Wushuang. He subsequently pulled Jian Wushuang to sit in front of the wooden table in the secret chamber. With a wave of his hand, the table was filled with delicious wine and food. Boss, we haven't seen each other in more than half a year. I think about you even when I'm dreaming, Tang Wuji said. Can you not be so mushy? Jian Wushuang winked at Tang Wuji. Haha, let's have a drink first. Tang Wuji began to pour Jian Wushuang some wine. Tang Xuer and the guests of Pavilion of Raindrops watched this scene unfold with shocked incomprehension. Boss? Tang Wuji looked like he was at least 40 years old, yet Jian Wushuang looked like he was in his 20s. The age gap was so large, yet Tang Wuji called Jian Wushuang his boss? This form of address inevitably made them feel quite weird. Tang Wuji, it seems like you are doing quite well, aren't you? Jian Wushuang drank a cup of wine and cast an interested glance at Tang Wuji. Haha, all thanks to you, boss. Tang Wuji smiled. Back then when we parted at the easternmost plain, didn't you give me a bit of money, boss? That much of money was an enormous amount compared to the wealth accumulated by the Pavilion of Raindrops. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. When he parted with Tang Wuji at the easternmost plain, he did indeed give Tang Wuji an amount of money which he won from killing numerous void experts at the easternmost plain. As for the exact amount of money he gained, he did not count. But he was sure it was not a small sum. I took that bag of money, returned to the Tianzong dynasty, and returned to Tiannan province. I immediately gathered all the old departments in the Pavilion of Raindrops and used only half a month to reconstruct the place. Subsequently, I spent another substantial amount of money to invite a few void guests whom you now see before you. Tang Wuji pointed to the void experts. With the help of these guests, my Pavilion of Raindrops rose to power again. Within the short span of 2 months, the Pavilion of Raindrops now holds an influential position in the Tiannan province. In the future, I have plans to establish contact with the Ouyang clan. With the backing of the Ouyang clan, the growth of my Pavilion of Raindrops will naturally speed up, Tang Wuji said. It looks very impressive. But when I first arrived, everyone seemed very worried. Jian Wushuang smiled. Alarmed, Tang Wuji looked awkwardly and sighed. My Pavilion of Raindrops may have risen, but the 9 Emperors sect that destroyed the Pavilion of Raindrops in the past now has plans of attacking us. Over the past 6 months, my Pavilion of Raindrops has never had any conflicts with the 9 Emperors sect. As we have the support of the Ouyang clan, we are on an equal footing with the 9 Emperors sect. But yesterday, the 9 Emperors sect seemed to have gone crazy. They actually dared to spread the news that they will destroy my Pavilion of Raindrops in 3 days. Oh, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but be surprised. Back then, he led many Golden Dragon ambassadors to attack the 9 Emperors sect, wounding it heavily. It had not even been a year. It was impossible that the 9 Emperors sect recovered now. Even as the 9 Emperors sect knew of the Ouyang clan's support for the Pavilion of Raindrops, they still had the guts to claim that they would destroy it within 3 days. If it was not for the Blood Feather Tower's involvement, the 9 Emperors sect would not be so daring themselves. Tang Wuji said in a low voice. Initially, we were not bothered that the 9 Emperors sect were about to attack. As our pavilion had the backing of the Ouyang clan, there was nothing to worry about. But we did not expect that just when the 9 Emperors sect announced their plan to attack, the Ouyang clan receded their support. The Ouyang clan said that unless my Pavilion of Raindrops merges with their Dark Hall, they would not help us block the 9 Emperors sect's attack. They may say it is a merger, but they actually meant to swallow my Pavilion of Raindrops as a whole. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Then what do you plan to do now? We will play by ear. Regardless of what happens, I will never agree to the conditions raised by the Ouyang clan. Pavilion Master, a guest by the side, furrowed his eyebrows. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly and looked at Tang Wuji with a smile. Tang Wuji, you don't have to worry about the Ouyang clan. The might of the 9 Emperors sect cannot be underestimated. Even if the Ouyang clan were to turn up, there is still a chance that they cannot stop them. Ha! Jian Wushuang winced. But don't worry. I happen to have a bit of a grudge against the 9 Emperors sect and I wish to seek revenge. So I will help you, Jian Wushuang said. Boss, you will help me? Tang Wuji rejoiced. Back then, during the easternmost hunting, Tang Wuji could attest to the strength of Jian Wushuang. In addition, his Pavilion of Raindrops' successful reconstruction was also due to his relationship with Jian Wushuang. So Tang Wuji had absolute faith in Jian Wushuang. Rest assured that with my help, that 9 Emperors sect would definitely be unable to snatch your Pavilion of Raindrops away from you, Jian Wushuang said with a confident laughter. Just when he finished speaking, the guests at the side were immediately dissatisfied. Thud! Oh, what an arrogant tone! A black-clothed elder smacked the table, stood up, glared at Jian Wushuang and said in a low tone, Kid, although I don't know what your relationship with our Pavilion Master is, but what you've just made clear is as good as sending the Pavilion of Raindrops to death. With your young age, how can you understand the power of the 9 Emperors sect? Forget the others. If we only talk about the experts of the Yin Void Realm, the 9 Emperors sect will have less than 5 people. In addition, their upper elder recently surpassed their level and attained the Yang Void Realm. Such tyrannical strength is enough to sweep the Pavilion of Raindrops away. At this moment of life and death, what my Pavilion of Raindrops needs to do is to craft ways to secure the Ouyang clan's support again. It is only with the Ouyang clan support that we can promise safety and peace for the Pavilion of Raindrops. Although the Ouyang clan's condition is slightly harsh, merging with their Dark Hall, in my opinion, is not necessarily a bad thing. Now you dare to advise the Pavilion Master to abandon the Ouyang clan and completely believe in you? You're just an insignificant fellow. How can you be capable enough and boldly say that the 9 Emperor sect will not conquer the Pavilion of Raindrops? What a joke, what a... Before the black-clothed elder could finish speaking, Jian Wushuang, who sat peacefully at the side, raised his head suddenly. The moment he looked up, rumble, slaughter origin exploded and a fearful killing intent swept out. Immediately, the entire secret chamber became dead silent. Not only was it dead silent, but the atmosphere was as chilly as winter. The black-clothed elder at this moment stopped speaking. He widened eyes and stared at Jian Wushuang in shock. It was not only him. The other guests at the Pavilion of Raindrops were also gazing at Jian Wushuang with an extremely frightened expression. Jian Wushuang had comprehended slaughter origin, the way of killing, so his killing intent was quite strong and frightening. Although the guests were all Yin Void experts, they were only in the initial Yin Void realm. With the explosion of Jian Wushuang's killing intent, they immediately felt suffocated, as if there was a sword pointing at their throats. The black-clothed elder felt a swelling in his throat. The words that have reached his mouth were swallowed back at this moment. Horror, fear. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Jian Wushuang. Just faced with the outburst of killing intent, they all felt genuine fear in their hearts. If this black-clothed young man were to really fight, then what would happen? Boss? Tang Wuji looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. Jian Wushuang still held his bowl of wine and swirled the wine gently. The explosive killing intent slowly withdrew. Someone has come, Jian Wushuang said peacefully. Ha! Jian Wushuang winced. The doors of the secret chamber suddenly opened. A man wearing a luxurious robe walked in with a big smile. Mr. Ouyang. Mr. Ouyang. Once the guests in the Pavilion of Raindrops saw this middle-aged man, they immediately greeted him humbly. Pavilion Master Tang, how is your consideration process coming along? The middle-aged man did not bother with the guests. After entering the secret chamber, he went and sat down on a chair, showing signs of familiarity. Tang Wuji smiled and looked at him. Mr. Ouyang, my word still remains. If you want my Pavilion of Raindrops to submit to your Ouyang clan, that isn't a problem at all. But if you want my Pavilion of Raindrops to merge with the Ouyang clan's Dark Hall, then that is impossible, Tang Wuji said coldly. The middle-aged man's grin immediately fell after hearing Tang Wuji's words. Tang Wuji, I take you as Pavilion Master, so I just call you Master Tang. But you don't cherish the chance. Submitting to our clan? Ha! My Ouyang clan is one of Tianzong dynasty's 7 sections. Even the most powerful sect would compete to submit to us. With our powerful status, do we even need your pavilion? To tell the truth, my clan's initial support for your pavilion was because we affirmed your pavilion's intelligence capabilities. Without our clan, you think with your own measly muscles, your pavilion of raindrops could be so successful within the short span of 6 months? Listen, you'd better obediently merge your pavilion with the Dark Hall. Then you will have a chance to live. If not, Tang Wuji had an uneasy expression. Jian Wushuang, who stood by the side, began to laugh. Ha ha! The Ouyang clan, one of the 7 sects in the Tianzong dynasty, takes advantage of others' precarious situation? The middle-aged man cast a cold glance at Jian Wushuang. Where did you come from, kid? I was speaking to Tang Wuji. How dare you interrupt? Get out of my way. As he finished speaking, the middle-aged man waved his hand, a gust of spiritual power gathering in his palms. Then he directly struck a blow to Jian Wushuang. This middle-aged man had a cultivation of the profound void realm. Under his attack, even a man like Tang Wuji, who was in the exceptional gold core realm, would have died. At this moment, Jian Wushuang still held his bowl of wine, but his gaze became cold. Thud! With his right hand still lightly swirling the bowl of wine, Jian Wushuang reached out to the middle-aged man's wrist with his left hand. It was like a huge pair of pliers in action as Jian Wushuang exerted significant strength. Crack! Sounds of bones cracking traveled through the air. The middle-aged man's face turned red, like the color of a pig liver. His mouth was opened as if he wanted to say something. Jian Wushuang gave him a tight slap. Slap! Bang! The crisp sound resounded and the middle-aged man was seen flying through the air. He crashed painfully against the wall of the secret chamber. The walls trembled for a while, and the man slowly slid off the wall. Tang Wuji and the guests at the pavilion were standing at the side, shocked by the sight that just unfolded before their eyes. This middle-aged man was Ouyang Xiu. He is an expert of the Ouyang clan who had reached the profound void realm. Notably, the guests in attendance were the most powerful ones of Pavilion of Raindrops, who reached the initial void realm. They treated Ouyang Xiu with the highest respect. But what about now? With a single stroke, Ouyang Xiu had been seen sent flying through the air like a dead dog. The guests were shocked and looked at Jian Wushuang in disbelief. The black-clothed elder was even more grateful that Jian Wushuang did not pick on him earlier. If not, Ouyang Xiu was completely blown away. Jian Wushuang stood up and walked towards Ouyang Xiu stealthily, casting a cold gaze at him. When you go back, tell your clan leader that from today onwards, the Pavilion of Raindrops will no longer associate with the Ouyang clan. If your clan is unhappy, come and find me. Or maybe when the experts of the 9 Emperors sect fight 2 days later, your clan can attack too. I do not mind clearing this mess altogether. Get lost. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Ouyang Xiu stood up and glared at Jian Wushuang with his fists clenched. His gaze was full of spite. Good. What Pavilion of Raindrops? Wait. Just you wait. 2 days later, I want to see your pavilion will kneel before the experts of the 9 Emperors sect and beg for mercy. Ouyang Xiu cursed as he left. Mr. Ouyang. The guests were worried, trying to retain him. Tang Wuji was the only one with furrowed eyebrows, keeping silent from beginning to the end. Just after Ouyang Xiu left, a few guests began to sigh. We're doomed. This time, it's the end for my Pavilion of Raindrops. Not only did we not get the help from the Ouyang clan, we even harshly offended them. How am I supposed to fight against the experts of the 9 Emperors sect 2 days later? The guests had all lost hope. Tang Wuji remained silent, but he was staring at Jian Wushuang with a bright gaze. Tang Wuji, do you believe me? Jian Wushuang looked at Tang Wuji and asked. Yes. Tang Wuji nodded without hesitation. That's enough. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and sat down to continue drinking without saying much. That night, a stealthy black shadow took advantage of the darkness and crept into the 9 Emperors sect. Even though the security was tight, sneaking in was no kick for Jian Wushuang's ability. Hidden within the Nine Emperors sect was the courtyard near the mountain. Jian Wushuang appeared in the void above the courtyard. Overlooking the emptiness, his facial expression remained. Indeed, father is no longer here. Jian Wushuang had predicted this, but could not help but be disappointed. The courtyard was once used to imprison his father. Jian Wushuang had brought a group of Golden Dragon ambassadors to destroy the place but was unable to save him. Since his father's location was exposed, seeing as to how the Blood Feather Tower valued his father, they would have naturally moved him elsewhere immediately. But Jian Wushuang had no idea where they moved him to. After confirming that his father had been moved, Jian Wushuang turned and left. When he passed by the meeting hall of the Nine Emperors sect, he stopped moving and looked inside. That person? Jian Wushuang saw a weathered elder who was leaning on a dragon-headed crutch and had smiling eyes. This weathered elder was not an expert of Nine Emperors sect. But now he was treated with unwavering attention, being surrounded by many experts themselves. Even Imortal, the upper elder who had already achieved the initial Yang Void Realm, was sitting beside the weathered elder. He looked very respectful. To be respected by the experts like this means that this is a big character. It could be one of the experts from the highest level. Jian Wushuang guessed silently. In that instant, the weathered elder who had been quietly sitting down in the meeting hall suddenly opened his smiling eyes and disappeared without a trace. The next moment, he appeared in the void that Jian Wushuang was at. But it was so quiet with not a single trace of human touch. Was it an illusion? The weathered elder murmured and returned to the meeting hall. In a void not far away, Jian Wushuang witnessed this with furrowed brows. Not bad. This old guy could detect my presence. 2 days later, also the day the Nine Emperors sect mentioned. Early this morning, when the sun first broke into the sky, a large number of experts from the Nine Emperors sect swarmed into action. Foreign void experts and the upper elder who had reached the initial Yang Void Realm were in action. Other than that, there were also a huge number of disciples of the primordial gold core realm. It can be said that almost all of those in the Nine Emperors sect were out in action. My Nine Emperors sect has suffered from depletion of strength ever since Jian Wushuang's previous attack. My position in the 3 sects and 4 schools has not been stable. Various sects of the Tiannan province are now waiting to replace us after we have fallen. Too bad that their dreams will soon be shattered. Today's battle is key in proving the strength of the Nine Emperors sect. There is no room for mistakes. We must cleanly wipe out the Pavilion of Raindrops, and let everyone know we cannot be challenged by just anyone. Are you clear? Imortal, upper elder of Nine Emperors sect, howled at the surrounding elders. Yes, they replied in unison. Imortal nodded slightly and looked towards the weathered elder who was standing in the crowd and leaning against his crutch. The elders of the Nine Emperors sect were all hyped and ready to fight. Only this elder remained as calm as usual. Mr. Ku, we will need you to stay back and be the backup, Imortal said. The weathered elder looked up at Imortal and said hoarsely, I will only fight against those from the Ouyang clan that may show up. As for that Pavilion of Raindrops, I will leave it to you all. No problem. It is only the Pavilion of Raindrops. They are no match for our Nine Emperors sect. Imortal grinned and waved. Set off. The experts of the Nine Emperors sect immediately set off. The headquarters of the Raindrop Pavilion is located in the ancient heart city of Tiannan province. The Nine Emperors sect had already spread the word. In 3 days they would destroy the Raindrop Pavilion. Today is the day. The whole of ancient heart city, including the various sects of Tiannan province, had their eyes on the Raindrop Pavilion. Inside the pavilion, the atmosphere was strangely dense. Many warriors had come together to receive orders from Tang Wuji, with the guests earlier as a secondary authority. And as for Jian Wushuang, his presence was only known to a few in the whole Raindrop Pavilion. This dense atmosphere was broken by a sudden gust of wind sweeping towards them from far away. They're here. Tang Wuji had a stiff expression as he stood on the roof and gazed forward, off into the distance. In the distance, a large number of black dots began appearing in quick succession. The warriors from the Nine Emperors sect mostly rode on griffins. Only 5 people were able to voidwalk, arriving at the headquarters of the Raindrop Pavilion in an instant. This lineup, seeing the warriors from the 9 emperors sect right before their eyes, everyone in the Raindrop Pavilion became distressed. Only 5 people in the 9 emperors sect had reached Inyang Void Realm, and they were all here. Not only that, more than half of the warriors who had reached the exceptional Gold Core Realm were here as well. They brought everyone they could. Quite a few warriors from various places were hidden in the surrounding area. Seeing this scene unfold before their eyes caused them to sigh. 3 people stood on top of a tall building that was close. They were also aware of what was happening at the Raindrop Pavilion. These 3 people were from the Ouyang clan, and one of them was Ouyang Xiu, who had previously been reprimanded by Jian Wushuang. The 9 Emperors sect has gone all out. They are determined to destroy the Raindrop Pavilion, so I really want to see if they can survive past today. Ouyang Xiu had a cold expression as he stared at the warriors of the Raindrop Pavilion with hatred. Ouyang Xiu, which one injured you? An elegant man peacefully asked. That man is not amongst these warriors. He should be hiding somewhere nearby, or maybe he has already left, Ouyang Xiu replied. You have reached the profound In Void Realm, but that man could still injure you so easily. He must at least have reached the exceptional In Void Realm, or maybe even be a Ing Void champion. According to your description, he is very young. Even I am curious about this young and forceful warrior. The man smiled and said, It was only because I underestimated him, giving him the chance to attack. If we were to fight one-on-one, he might not be my opponent. Ouyang Xiu whispered. Oh! The elegant man raised his brow and smiled, not saying anything else. The warriors of the 9 Emperors sect had all arrived before the headquarters of the Raindrop Pavilion. Mo Feng, the upper elder of the 9 Emperors sect, cast a glance at the numerous warriors and waved his hand. From today onwards, there will no longer be a Raindrop Pavilion in Tianzong Dynasty. Kill! There was not any trash-talking. The purpose of the 9 Emperors sect's attack this time was to claim authority once and for all. The warriors of the 9 Emperors sect were all ready. Upon Mo Feng's orders, each of them turned into hungry wolves and headed towards the warriors of Raindrop Pavilion. Fight! Tang Wuji let out a hungry cry. Although the warriors of Raindrop Pavilion were not as good as those from the 9 Emperors sect, they still fought with their lives. Once both sides met each other, the battle truly began. However, there was such a huge difference between their strength, the end result was visible right from the start. Those from the Raindrop Pavilion were not good at defending and were overwhelmed by their enemy. This scene caused those warriors from the various sects, who were hiding, to let out sighs of despair. The difference is too big. There is a clear loser. They cannot defend at all. The only reason the Raindrop Pavilion was able to stand against the 9 Emperors sect in the past was because of the Ouyang clan's support. But 2 days ago, for some unknown reason, the two had a dispute. Without the Ouyang clan, how is the Pavilion of Raindrops going to fight against the 9 Emperors sect? Indeed, the 9 Emperors sect is a top sect in the Tianzong dynasty. Although they previously suffered and had a loss in strength, a starving camel will always be bigger than a horse. They are still not someone to mess with. At least, someone at the level of the Raindrop Pavilion is not strong enough to mess with them. Upon hearing these words, the warriors pitted the Raindrop Pavilion. They could see that both parties were vastly different in strength. Unless a miracle occurred, the Raindrop Pavilion would meet its end here. But miracles do exist. When the fight broke out, Jian Wushuang, who was also watching from nearby, twitched at a thought. This 9 Emperors sect sure is vigilant. Even now, Mo Feng has yet to move, despite many warriors doing so. With a single glance, Jian Wushuang spotted the upper elder of the 9 Emperors sect, Mo Feng. Mo Feng was standing off in the distance, with no intention to intervene. He seemed to be waiting around only as a backup. Aside from Mo Feng, the old guy I saw 2 days ago at the 9 Emperors sect has not appeared either. Jian Wushuang's eyes smiled. He was not worried about Mo Feng, who had just reached the initial Yang Void Realm. But the weathered elder that he previously saw at the 9 Emperor sect was undeniably strong. He deserved Jian Wushuang's respect. and that weathered elder had yet to appear, which led Jian Wushuang to suspect that he was hiding nearby. Screw it, there is no way the Raindrop Pavilion can withstand this attack. If I don't intervene now, the loss will be huge. Jian Wushuang lightly smiled and flew forward. The battle was still progressing. Those from the Raindrop Pavilion were retreating on their own. Damn it! What to do? What to do? Pavilion Master. We must immediately think of a way to retreat. Loud voices rose one after another, and Tang Wuji frowned deeply while listening to them. Then he heard a light voice. You need to be careful. Whatever happens next, leave it to me. Boss. Tang Wuji was startled and quickly looked up. On the battlefield, he saw a Yin Void warrior from the Nine Emperors sect that was recklessly killing his opponents. Suddenly, a shadow with a black robe stealthily appeared beside him. Then he saw a cold sharp blade emitting sword light. Shwa! The sword light cut through the warrior's neck easily and a human head was sent flying into the sky. After that, the black robe shadow vanished and appeared again in front of another Yin Void warrior. Shwa! The same scene reenacted itself. In only a moment, 2 Yin Void warriors from the Nine Emperor sect had been killed. Damn it! Standing on the edge of the battlefield, Missouri Feng saw the scene unfold and was furious. Mo Feng could no longer sit still. Power at the Yang Void realm radiated from him as he immediately rushed toward Jian Wushuang. The Nine Emperor sect was heavily weakened by Jian Wushuang half a year ago. However, after recovering for half a year, there were now 5 warriors from the Nine Emperors sect in the Yang Void realm. But, just now, 2 of them had been killed by Jian Wushuang in the blink of an eye. This would cause anyone to feel the heartache. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang moved like a ghost, quickly drifting through the area and killing those 2 warriors in succession. Then he flew towards a purple-robed middle-aged man, who was the current sect master of the Nine Emperors sect, Chu Nan. That ice-cold sword light flashed again. What? Chu Nan was shocked. Stop! Stop right now! Mo Feng, who was rushing there, shouted. But Jian Wushuang didn't stop. The ice-cold sword light, containing a humongous power, pierced forward with a burst of killing intent. Chu Nan realized his intent and tried his best to defend. But, because of the huge gap in their strength, he was only able to slow him down a little. Young man, you dare! Mo Feng raged. In the next moment, he could only watch as the sword light passed through Chu Nan's neck, cutting off his head. You're dead! A second later, Mo Feng's expression twisted and the look in his eyes became cold. While staring at Jian Wushuang, a huge hammer instantly appeared in his hand out of nowhere. At a glance, the huge hammer seemed to weigh 1,000 caddies, but Mo Feng easily held it and swung it. At the very moment, he swung it, creating ripples that contained a terrifying power and spread out in waves, forcing the warriors who were fighting in the area to retreat. Rumble! The hammer roared and appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Ridiculous! Jian Wushuang sneered without glancing at Mo Feng. Then he adjusted his grip and hacked out with his sword. It was a normal move, but it used his full strength. The power of this move almost reached the profound Yang Void realm, which was definitely more powerful than Mo Feng, who had only recently reached the initial Yang Void realm bang. With a thunder sound, the huge hammer trembled. Then a strong force passed through the hammer to Mo Feng. Mo Feng's eyes widened with shock and his face turned pale. He couldn't help looking at Jian Wushuang while he retreated. He saw Jian Wushuang's figure fly up and rush toward him. You thought you could kill me? Jian Wushuang sneered and said, I killed Chu Nan, and I can kill you too. After he finished speaking, a terrifying killing intent radiated from him, filling the area. Even Mo Feng had never seen such a strong killing intent. When Jian Wushuang looked at him again, Mo Feng couldn't help feeling terrified, as if the one he faced with was not a human being but an Asura from hell. At this moment, Jian Wushuang hacked out with his long sword again. This weightless move which seemed weak and feeble, but the slaughter source contained in it was enough to freeze the entire area. As it moved toward Mo Feng, his eyes widened and the feeling of an unprecedented and deadly crisis struck him. He had no doubt that this weightless and seemingly weak move could kill him in an instant. Help me, Mr. Ku! Help me, Mo Feng called out with a sad and shrill voice. Hearing that, the weathered elder on crutches who had been hiding suddenly moved. He moved at a speed that was much faster than Jian Wushuang. Before the sword light fell on Mo Feng, the weathered elder appeared. His eyes flashed with a sharp look as he stretched out his dry and yellow palm, covered in a flowing stream of spiritual power, then turning into a sharp claw as it caught Jian Wushuang's long sword. Crack! The sharp claw caught the sword and prevented it from moving. Arrogant! Jian Wushuang suddenly shouted as the power contained in the sword surged. At the same time, the killing intent formed into a flowing light and rushed towards the weathered elder's forehead. Hum! Surprise flashed in the weathered elder's eyes as he immediately released the sword blade in his hand, slamming down with the crutch in his other hand to defend. As the crutch smashed down, the fleeting sound of a thunder crash was heard. Bang! 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 Crashes sounded, with each collision creating a small blast wave. Several moments later, a large blast wave formed and swept out in all directions. Rumble! The whole area trembled, with both Jian Wushuang and the weathered elder being forced backwards. As they separated, the whole battlefield turned peaceful. Many warriors from the 9 Emperors sect and the Raindrop Pavilion were shocked. Even the warriors in hiding were aghast. Too fast, what happened just now was so fast. From the moment Jian Wushuang began moving, he had killed 2 warriors from the 9 Emperors sect in succession, as well as killing their sect master, Chu Nan, and then forced Mo Feng back. At that point, the weathered elder appeared to save Mo Feng, and a fierce exchange happened between Jian Wushuang and the weathered elder. So fast, it all happened suddenly and ended just as quickly. Before the warriors in the area could even react, Jian Wushuang and the weathered elder had already moved away from each other, and 3 bodies lay on the ground. Among them, 2 were elders of the 9 Emperors sect, and the other was the sect master of the 9 Emperors sect. In such a short time, they were all killed by Jian Wushuang. How terrifying was his strength! That man is from the Raindrop Pavilion? No. He must be a helper that was hired by the Raindrop Pavilion. Haha! There is still hope. Many warriors from the Raindrop Pavilion suddenly seemed to be infused with excitement. Boss! Tang Wuji also looked at Jian Wushuang excitedly. Those guests of the Raindrop Pavilion who were becoming desperate before suddenly became hopeful when they saw Jian Wushuang's strength, and their hope continued to increase. On the other side, the people of the 9 Emperors sect did not look happy. Up in the air, Jian Wushuang and the weathered elder stood facing each other, and Mo Feng had already moved back out of the way. Although he was a warrior in the Yang Void Realm, he understood that he was not qualified to join this fight. Old man, you stayed hidden for such a long time. Now you've finally decided to show yourself. Jian Wushuang asked and smiled. I was only hidden for a short while. But you? The weathered elder looked over at him coldly and said, We have been searching for you since the easternmost hunt ended, but you seem to have disappeared from the face of the earth for the last half-year. Today you finally reappeared. Jian Wushuang, it was not easy to find you. As soon as the weathered elder finished speaking, especially since he mentioned Jian Wushuang, all the people in the surrounding area broke out into heated debates. What did he say? Who was he referring to? Jian Wushuang? That young warrior with the sword is Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang, the strongest person on the earthly dragon list. The strongest genius, beyond dispute, since the Tianzong dynasty was established. A myth, a legend. Everyone looked at Jian Wushuang, with eyes full of panic and shock, as well as blind worship. Jian Wushuang was so famous in Tianzong dynasty. Before attending the easternmost hunt, he was the strongest on the earthly dragon list and the most talented genius in the Tianzong dynasty. But after the easternmost hunt, as soon as the easternmost hunt ended, everything that happened on the battlefield spread. Naturally, news of his shocking battle results during the easternmost hunt spread. He defeated 2 large empires alone. One sword move killed 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire, each of which could be ranked top 5 on the earthly dragon list. Finally, Jian Wushuang led the Tianzong dynasty, a small empire, and trod over the other 11 northwestern dynasties. In the end, The top 6 ranks of the easternmost hunt were all taken by warriors from the Tianzong dynasty. The Tianzong dynasty had really performed a miracle in this easternmost hunt. And Jian Wushuang was the leading hero. They heard that Jian Wushuang had also confronted and killed many assassins from Bloodfeather Tower during the easternmost hunt, including an expert in the Yang Void Realm. The news was spread, but it was not confirmed. These battle records basically made him a legend. The Millennium Chronicle, written by the Gladiator Arena, had long recorded a dozen pages about Jian Wushuang, identifying him as the most talented genius in the Tianzong dynasty's history. Now, the legendary hero many warriors worshipped was standing in front of them. He is. On a high building nearby, Ouyang Xiu of the Ouyang clan was staring at Jian Wushuang wide-eyed. He was unconvinced before and thought he was heavily hurt by Jian Wushuang 2 days ago because of his carelessness. But now, after learning about Jian Wushuang's identity, he didn't have anything to say. The gentleman standing beside Ouyang Xiu seemed a little weird now. Is he Jian Wushuang? Haha. Interesting. That's why he was able to defeat Ouyang Xiu so easily. He is much stronger than half a year ago when he was in the easternmost hunt. I suspect he has reached the Yin Void Realm. The gentleman was curious about Jian Wushuang's cultivation. Everyone who was watching was curious as well. At this moment the weathered elder spoke again. Your strength has improved so much in just a year's time? I fought with you in person and still couldn't easily defeat you. Your cultivation. The weathered elder's face was grim. Looking carefully, though Jian Wushuang had concealed his strength, the weathered elder was able to tell because of how close they were standing and because his own cultivation was higher. The peak of the Yin Void Realm? The weathered elder suddenly stared with his eyes wide open and said in a deep voice, in half a year, you broke through from the exceptional Gold Core Realm to the peak of the Yin Void Realm. Jian Wushuang, I was contemptuous of the rumor that you were the most talented genius of the Tianzong dynasty. But now, it seems that I have underestimated you. His words, husky and low, were heard by everyone in the area. Peak. Yin Void. Can he really be at the peak of the Yin Void Realm? How can that be? God. It's only been half a year. He was just in the Gold Core Realm when he attended the easternmost hunt half a year ago. He improved from the exceptional Gold Core Realm to the initial Yin Void Realm, then the profound Yin Void Realm, the exceptional Yin Void Realm, and finally to the Yin Void Champion in half a year. My God! Amazing! Everyone on the battlefield and in the surrounding area was shocked. Everyone stared at Jian Wushuang with shocked expressions. They couldn't help thinking that he was truly a monster, breaking through from the exceptional Gold Core Realm to the peak of the Yin Void Realm within just half a year. No one could imagine that. Even though everyone else was shocked, Jian Wushuang was calm. It was normal for the weathered elder to recognize him, since he wasn't wearing anything to hide his face. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, looked over at the weathered elder and said, You really are from Bloodfeather Tower. May I know your name? Kuya, the weathered elder said. Kuya. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, I've never heard of you. Warriors in Bloodfeather Tower are as numerous as clouds in the sky. How could you know them all? Kuya said with a snort. That was true. As an overlord of the Tianzong dynasty, Bloodfeather Tower did have a lot of warriors. Greyrobe, who was in charge of the intelligence network in Bloodfeather Tower, might be one of the top 3 influential figures, but his cultivation was only at the initial Yang Void Realm, which was quite normal. There should be others in Bloodfeather Tower who were much stronger than him, such as this man, Kuya. He was much stronger than Greyrobe. It doesn't matter whether you know me or not. From today on, you will never be able to forget me, because you will die while filled with resentment towards me, Kuya said while staring at Jian Wushuang with a cold expression. Die! Jian Wushuang's expression was cold as he said, Greyrobe tried to assassinate me several times, but what was the result? It turned out that he died by my hand. I'm not the same as that idiot. I will not underestimate a peerless genius like you, so I'll use all my strength to kill you once I take action. Kuya slightly raised his palms and a surge of spiritual power gathered in them. The level of power was much greater than the initial Yang Void Realm or even the profound Yang Void Realm. Kuya, he should be an expert in the exceptional Yang Void Realm. The exceptional Yang Void Realm? Jian Wushuang squinted. When he first saw Kuya in the Nine Emperors sect 2 days ago, he knew that his strength was extraordinary. And the quick fight he just had with Kuya was only for show. Neither one of them used their full strength. Only now did Jian Wushuang realize what level Kuya's cultivation was at. While radiating a strong aura, Kuya tightly clenched his fists and slowly stepped forward. With each step, his aura became stronger, until it finally reached his limit. Then Kuya immediately made his move. Jian Wushuang, prepare to die. Boom! The air suddenly trembled. An invisible wave rippled outwards. But Kuya had disappeared from where he had been before. Where are they? Numerous warriors, including those who were hidden, all focused their gaze. They just barely noticed a ray of light slicing through the air. Shwa! The space in front of Jian Wushuang suddenly erupted as a yellow shriveled palm, which changed to resemble an eagle claw, grasped at Jian Wushuang's throat. So fast! A trace of surprise flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. While observing the shattered space in front of him, his body retreated. At the same time, he grasped his long sword and sliced through the air with a horizontal sword light that headed directly towards Kuya. Although Kuya's initial claw attack failed, the power collected at his fingertips caused the area to tremble until it was on the verge of collapse. Then he changed forms from the claw, back to an opened palm, then thrust towards Jian Wushuang again, with a gust of terrifying spiritual power concentrated in his palm. 3 beasts killing fist, ape killing fist. Kuya let out a low howl as a towering shadow suddenly rose from his back. It was the shadow of a giant ape that seemed to have come here from ancient times. When the giant ape formed, a gust of ancient yet chilling air radiated out. At the same time, the giant ape ferociously pounded its own chest before morphing into a fist an instant later. This fist was as big as a mountain, and it directly exploded outwards. Rumble whoosh. This monstrous fist rushed through the air and immediately shattered the ray of sword light that was flying towards it before continuing to fly towards Jian Wushuang, who was quickly retreating. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted mildly and sparkled with light. Break! With a low growl, Slaughter Origin exploded and a shocking gust of killing intent filled the area. Then, Jian Wushuang's ferocious long sword surged with Slaughter Origin as it charged out like a falling meteor towards the giant ape fist. Pong! As the two forces met, a loud bang was heard, and a hole appeared in the giant ape's fist. The hole gradually increased until it caused the fist to shatter. A magnificent spiritual power flowed out in every direction and dispersed. You can actually fight back against this move head-on? Kuya stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold expression on his face. Then he suddenly leapt forward. The moment when he leapt forward, the shadow of the giant ape behind him also immediately changed. What was originally an ancient giant ape had become a fierce tiger that was in the prowling position and ready to attack. This fierce tiger was also massive beyond comparison. 3 beasts killing fist, tiger killing fist. Kuya summoned his strength and struck out with his palm once again. Roar! Along with a roar, the prowling tiger shadow behind him instantly exploded with power. His huge body leapt and lunged directly towards Jian Wushuang. As it lunged forward, Jian Wushuang felt a heavy pressure weigh down on his heart that he did not dare to take lightly. As the long sword was thrust forward, Slaughter Origin was harnessed to its extreme. Boom! A collision occurred once again, but this time Jian Wushuang was forced to retreat in a shameful manner. Not bad. You are indeed Tianzong Dynasty's most talented genius. The first 2 moves of my 3 beasts killing fist could not stop you. But let's see how you fare against the 3rd move, Kuya said in low and emotionless voice. As his voice fell, he suddenly moved, causing a gust of spiritual power to begin swirling. As he bent his body, the shadow tiger began to transform once more into a long meandering dragon. Even stationary, this dragon was already more than 30 feet in height. This enormous dragon scanned the surroundings below with its eyes, and everyone felt a chilling aura from the body of this enormous dragon. 3 beasts killing fist, dragon killing fist. Kuya suddenly let out an explosive roar as the dragon straightened its meandering body. Its body looked like an arrow that had locked onto its target and was ready to be released. Then the enormous dragon shadow behind Kuya instantly shot forward. Immediately the world became gray. The massive dragon flew through the air, leaving the sound of thunder wherever it passed. It only took a moment for the dragon to appear in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted slightly as he did everything he could to resist the attack. But when Jian Wushuang truly collided with the massive dragon, the dragon exploded. Boom! Jian Wushuang's body shot backwards like a cannonball, crashing down towards the rooftop of the raindrop pavilion. Even though the house could be considered big, it was immediately shattered by the massive force. As for Jian Wushuang, he continued falling toward the ground, creating a gigantic hole where he landed. After falling and creating the gigantic hole, Jian Wushuang was silent for a moment. Is he dead? Kuya floated in the air while looking at the giant pit with slightly squinted eyes. To die under the dragon-killing fist of my three beasts-killing fist can be considered an honor, Kuya said proudly to himself. But just as he finished speaking, a rumble was heard. In the giant pit, rocks started to float toward the sky and morphing into rays of flowing light, which flew towards Kuya at a visible speed. Kuya's expression sank. With a wave of his hand, the floating rocks were smashed. But Jian Wushuang climbed out of the pit and reappeared once again. He quickly leapt into the sky and stopped in front of Kuya. You didn't die? Kuya looked at Jian Wushuang and asked. His expression changed slightly and said, Not only did you live, you didn't even get injured? Kuya naturally felt a bit uneasy. Kuya knew that he had already used his full strength, even using the most powerful move of the three beasts killing fist. But in the end, he didn't harm Jian Wushuang at all? Jian Wushuang looked at Kuya with a strange expression and thought, This old guy's essence realm really is quite special. After a few confrontations, Jian Wushuang understood Kuya's strength. The exceptional Yang Void realm was indeed impressive, and Kuya's essence realm was also very unique. Jian Wushuang could tell that Kuya had comprehended two essences. One was Thunderbolt, but the one with greater mastery was the Hundred Beasts essence. The Hundred Beasts essence. If he persisted in comprehending it, there was a chance he would comprehend the origin of all beasts. There were many origins in the universe, and the origin of all beasts was one of the extremely powerful origins. What a pity! Although Kuya understood these two unique realms, he had not merged them. If he had, then he would have been able to kill this slaughter doppelganger, yin-yang doppelganger, of mine. Jian Wushuang shook his head secretly. That's right. Kuya had displayed his awesome power, and the exceptional Yang Void realm was indeed very impressive. But it was still not good enough to be praised by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stood in the air. With a flip of his hand, an explosive long sword beyond comparison flew out from his palm. As for the original long sword, he kept it in his interspatial ring. Looking at the triple kill sword in his hand, he spoke with a tone of expectancy. Kid, this is your first fight after your awakening. Don't let me down. The triple kill sword is a killing sword and a superior third-grade magic weapon with extraordinary power. Therefore, when Jian Wushuang returned from the ancestors' land, he kept the triple kill sword in his interspatial ring. Instead, he carried an average longsword on his back. Usually, he used this average longsword. It was only when he met real experts that he used the triple kill sword. In the current battle, he killed 3 Yin Void warriors from the 9 Emperors sect in succession and even battled fiercely with Kuya. But he had never once used the triple kill sword. PSH trying to play tricks now. Kuya noticed when the long sword in Jian Wushuang's hand changed, but he did not care. With one stride, he once again appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Although I couldn't kill you instantly, it doesn't matter. I only need one more shot. Kuya spoke in a chilling tone. His body bent forward as a massive meandering dragon reappeared. 3 beasts killing fist, dragon killing fist. With Kuya's explosive shout, the massive dragon, covered by a layer of thunderbolt essence, roared and slammed itself directly towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's expression was as peaceful as water, But the triple kill sword in his hands started pulsating crazily, as if it was shouting with excitement. Jian Wushuang then grabbed the triple kill sword, raised it high above him and released a horrifying surge of killing intent. This surge of killing intent, strong beyond comparison, shot into the sky. The sky, which was originally vast and clear, became dark, with stormy clouds crowding the sky. A vague figure appeared behind Jian Wushuang. It was a 50-foot-tall giant. The giant stood straight and appeared like a god of war. For the countless warriors that were watching the battle, they could not help but look terrified. Everybody was looking at the giant with a horrific expression because the giant was exerting an enormous amount of pressure on them. As Jian Wushuang's triple kill sword was slowly raised over his head, the long sword in the giant's hand was raised simultaneously. Rumble, the whole earth seemed to be trembling as killing intent permeated the air. Blood-emptying technique. The first move, all-smashing stroke. The light in Jian Wushuang's eyes exploded and seemed to take form as it swept everything away. The triple kill sword that was raised high above his head fiercely hacked down. The magnificent giant behind him also swung his sword down. An unparalleled sword strike. Sword of killing. It was finally here. The world roared and the air seemed to solidify. All light immediately disappeared, leaving only a majestic bloody sword shadow. The bloody sword shadow was huge beyond comparison, and its power was even more monstrous. It immediately slew the massive dragon which was charging towards him. Facing this unparalleled sword, the massive dragon seemed like a small insect without the power to resist. Shwa! The sword light landed on the massive dragon's body and hacked the dragon into two halves. The power of this unparalleled sword was only slightly weakened. Then it continued to charge towards Kuya. Kuya's pupils, which had always been contracted, opened wide. A trace of shock could be detected in his gaze, as if he could not believe this attack came from Jian Wushuang, a Yin Void champion. In the next moment, the unparalleled sword pierced through him mercilessly. Kuya's body split apart. Then the sword strike frantically vibrated and tore his body to pieces, only leaving behind a blood drizzle. Exception Yang Void Realm expert Kuya. Dead. Silence. Whether it was the surrounding battlefields or the hidden warriors from the different sects, all of them were silent at this moment. What just happened? An exceptional Yang Void Realm warrior, a top expert in the Tianzong dynasty, was directly killed by a single sword strike? Killed so swiftly? With no resistance at all? And Jian Wushuang was so young? 6 months ago, when he participated in the easternmost hunt, he was only 19. Now, half a year later, he might be 20. A 20-year-old killed someone in the exceptional Yang Void Realm? How was he so powerful? Unbelievable, that was the word in everyone's mind at the moment. As for Jian Wushuang, he was still holding his long sword as usual. He floated in the air, looking at the bloody haze on the ground as he shook his head and said, "Being in the exceptional Yang Void Realm, you might have been a top warrior in the Tianzong dynasty, but you were still no match for me." As far as everyone knew, in the easternmost hunt, Jian Wushuang had been in the exceptional Gold Core realm when he fought against Greyrobe, who was in the initial Yang Void realm, and he even had a bit of an upper hand. Although only half a year had passed, within the span of 6 months, he had obtained a great amount of luck from the ancestors' land. His strength was way too strong. His cultivation alone he had risen 4 levels, and he had comprehended the slaughter origin. He had made accomplishments in both the slaughter origin and world origin. The sword skill he displayed, the blood-emptying technique, was also of the superior 3rd grade. And he had the legendary triple kill sword, which was also a superior 3rd grade magic weapon. Kuya was only stronger than him in cultivation. In other aspects, he could not compare with Jian Wushuang at all. The 3 beasts killing fist that Kuya prided himself on wasn't even at the origin level. As a whole, Jian Wushuang's real strength exceeded the exceptional Yang Void realm. This allowed him to easily kill Kuya with his slaughter doppelganger, without ever having to fight in person. Jian Wushuang had comprehended world origin first. After a month of meditation at the Rainstorm Palace, his improvement in world origin was much greater than that in slaughter origin, so his own battle strength was definitely higher than his slaughter doppelganger. With the death of Kuya, No one could stop Jian Wushuang anymore. Jian Wushuang's triple kill sword was vibrating crazily as his body floated out. Mr. Ku was killed. Mo Feng, the upper elder from the Nine Emperors sect, was in a state of shock. Suddenly, he felt a wave of threat seeping into his heart and instantly sensed a chilly sword light by his side. Not good. Mo Feng panicked and desperately tried to resist, but it was to no avail. Shua! The sword light brushed past Mo Feng and his head flew off. After killing him, Jian Wushuang felt that the vibration strength of the triple kill sword increased, as if the triple kill sword had an innate desire to kill. Little guy, don't be impatient. I'll give you one more. Jian Wushuang flashed a chilly smile. His body floated off once again and reappeared in front of the last void warrior of the Nine Emperors sect. His sword light similarly brushed past him and this void warrior was instantly killed, with no chance to even resist. As of now, the 5 Yang Void Realm warriors, including the Yang Void Realm Upper Elder, Mo Feng, had all died.